refused to shine, I would still be loving you. When mountains crumble to the sea, there will still be you and me. Kind of woman, I give you my all. Kind of woman, nothing more. Little drops of rain, whisper of the pain, tears of love lost in the days gone by. My love is strong.
Welcome to Facts After Dark, a safe space to get deep and personal as we discuss adult themes and maybe even some fantasies, because we all know the deeper, the better. Now turn down the lights, turn up the heat, and let's get spicy. Oh yeah.
Hey now. Let's get it on. Good evening, everyone. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. A little different for a lot of folks who watch our show Monday through Friday, 8 till noon. This is what's referred to as Facts After Dark. We do certainly touch on politics, but we get into topics. We talk about all kinds of things here. And tonight's show will feature the topic, Breaking the Red Pill, Can Men Love Themselves? A lot to discuss on that topic. We've touched on these things a little bit before in different ways, but the red pill impacts our lives more than we might know. So I'm going to be honored to be joined by a couple of special guests, co-hosts that'll be joining us in just a moment. But let's do the usual to get this out to the FYP. It takes a lot. There's a lot of traffic out there on a Friday night, not our normal content. So anything you can do to help us push the FYP, tapping is clapping, liking and loving, sharing is caring. There is a gifting goal if you want to help us out there. Don't forget, you can join our Discord. A lot of the information that we talk about on the show ends up in our Discord or starts in our Discord. You can find the link to the Discord in the link tree that's in my bio. Check out the merch. You can go to, there's two merch stores. The first one, it says Tobias. That happens to be my son. Check out his stuff. The second one is Facts HQ. That's the link to our merch store. All kinds of cool stuff there. Join our team. Please join our team. And so we'll get into the conversation tonight. I appreciate everybody being here. Ironically enough, about how can men love themselves. It's full humility and transparency. It's not exactly my cup of tea, loving myself, which is not uncommon for a lot of men. I was thinking about this morning's show, as a matter of fact. There was a lot of flowers sent my way, and I'm getting better at it. I'm sure my mods will, hopefully they'll agree. Getting better at it. It's not easy, though, for men. It's because I've talked about this before, about how there are so many societal stigmas connected to men's emotions that they're allowed to show outwardly, publicly, and it's usually around anger and lust. Like, society tells men the only true emotions that you can really show are anger and lust. We want to change that narrative. We want to flip that script a lot, as a matter of fact. I have, if anybody's ever watched any of my content, either my live streams or just content that I publish, I'm a big advocate for mental health, but in particular men's mental health. I mean, it's great that there's Movember, and it's great that there's Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, but it's a daily thing. I've been somebody who's been going to therapy for years, and I advocate for it. Even if things are good, you should go. And I think the problem that this is red pilling, this is the patriarchy, this is misogyny. Men perceive self-help in general as a sign of weakness. I see it as strength. I see it as the ability to admit one's own, we'll call it, for lack of a better term, we'll call it faults, opportunities for growth, how we navigate good times and bad. And I want more men to do it. So our conversations tonight will be centered around what red pilling is. Will be centered around black pill, MRAs, men's rights activists, and the manosphere. There's a lot to it. This conversations could be heavy, which is fine, which is kind of what we want. And I trust this community, and I'm honored that both Ash and Adi trust me enough to host this platform tonight, and they'll be joining us soon. But let's kind of start from the top as to what red pilling is. Red pilling has evolved from a pop culture metaphor into a broad internet age worldview. What began as a reference to the Matrix, choosing to see an uncomfortable truth, now describes a set of online beliefs that claim to reveal hidden realities about society, about gender, about power, and about politics. What red pilling means today. In contemporary use, being red pilled usually implies rejecting mainstream. A lot of this is I don't want this to be men centric, but the conversation this evening is about trying to remind men about how susceptible we are for a variety of reasons, of which we'll touch on, to being red pilled. It's not. We think about it in terms of young people. We think about the Charlie Kirk effect on college campuses. Very, very true. Very, very true. Very, very real. But it's not just for that demographic. It's not just for young men 18 to 25. The issue is we'd like to get out ahead of it so it doesn't happen. But you can be red pilled at any point, right? No matter where you are. Education has a lot to do with this. The more educated you are, the more ability you have to critically think, and we talk about that a lot. So when you're listening to conversations tonight, don't think of it as just your sons, because it could be anybody. But that's the group of people that we really want to get out ahead of, because as we've seen in the body politic, women are getting more and more liberal while men are remaining conservative. So the gap is widening, and we'll talk about that tonight. No YouTube this evening, just for a couple of reasons, but no YouTube tonight. Anyway, in contemporary use, being red-pilled usually implies rejecting mainstream narratives, the media, academia, institutions, believing society is rigged against certain groups, most often men, embracing hard truths about dating, masculinity, economics, or politics, valuing self-reliance, dominance, and skepticism of empathy-based norms. Men in general struggle with expressing and emoting. I am humbled by the men that have joined our community that have talked about these things, that have never realized before what that it was licensed to be emotional without it being anger and lust. The ability to just express oneself, to be transparent, to be vulnerable. It takes courage, sadly. My mic is foggy. That sounds good to me. Okay. Can I fix what? Can I fix my mic? Does it sound weird? Sounds okay to me. Is there an issue there? Let me just check in with my team. Hang on one second. I think we're good. Sounds good. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Again, it's about flipping the script, right? It's about making sure that we're paying attention to things like we're going to talk about the male loneliness epidemic will probably come up tonight. I think it's a self-inflicted kind of thing. I think the reason that men are lonely is because men are predators. So two things can be true in my head. I believe that men need a lot of help. I believe that then the burden and the responsibility does not fall to women; it falls to men. I think it has to come from us calling out bad behavior. We can no longer can't participate in locker room talk, can't participate in innuendo. Have to understand why women feel under threat, and also it is all men until it's no men. So those things can be true. And anybody who disagrees with that, especially men who get triggered by it, we can hear you, but something is off. My mic is off. It doesn't sound off to me. It sounds fine in my head. I'm not going to try to fix it because it'll just blow shit up. Anyway, so we'll get into all that tonight. And again, this conversations it can go in a variety of ways. I don't necessarily know where it'll end up, but we're going to talk about understanding the red pill mindset. We're going to talk about men's self-worth and emotional health. We may not get to all of it this evening, but we'll get to a lot of it. So let me go back to where I was, and then we'll await the arrival of our special guests and co-hosts tonight. Why red pilling took off. Economic and social dislocation. Now these are I've been studying this for a while, and these are kind of a culmination of a lot of things. Actually, speak of the devil, I'll bring up Ash. Well, hello.
Hi. I was waiting. I didn't know if you.
I have to reset something.
Oh, okay. Turn my camera on. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Good.
Happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday. We made it.
I'm glad I'm glad you're here. I owe the two of you an apology. I owe all of you an apology. Last Friday night we were supposed to do this, and then a little drama happened in my house. But I'm glad we're doing this. Thank you for being here, Ash. Hi, Adi. Thank you for being here as well. You guys should both introduce yourself. So most people probably know Ash. Many may not know Adi. So please, if you guys would mind. And first of all, I'm honored the two of you decided to do this with me. So thank you both. Introductions, please.
Thanks for letting us be here. Yeah, I'm Ash. Yeah, I'm Ash. Nice to meet you all.
Okay. Adi, your turn.
You'll learn about me, I'm sure, as we go. So
yeah, I tend to say a lot more low key. Hi, my name's Adi. I go by she, they pronouns. If you can't roll your R's, that's okay. I go by Ari as well. I'm an educator. I'm a Black woman, just to name out my intersectionality, so you know the perspective I'm coming from. I'm a feminist womanist. And so in my education, I have been educating for almost a decade, but I've taken a step outside of the classroom because we all know our education system does not pay teachers well, especially educators who teach our youngest learners. So now I have stepped out the classroom and I teach teachers not to be racist, to make sure that we are addressing the school to prison pipeline. So my social justice and liberation for all is my heart, focus, and passion work.
I love that. Thank you again, both of you, for being here. We've had some conversations, the three of us, and we've got a pretty robust script. We may not get to all of it tonight. So let me just finish going through just the high level of Red Pill. And Adi, since you built a lot of the content regarding tonight's show, hoping that you can unpack. We'll talk about red pilling now, but there's also black pilling. There's also the manosphere. There's also MRAs. There's all types of things that I think people should be made aware of. And our goal, again, this evening is to hopefully touch on why it's so important, why we want to talk about breaking the red pill, but in particular, are men capable of loving themselves? I want to think so. I have to think so. And we're hoping that this conversation will spark a lot of people who are listening, or people who have men in their families who have been red pilled, and what we can do to try to help. So I'll just go down this list. Economic and social distortion, stagnant wages could have been a cause. These are all assumptions, and a lot of it is based in fact. And please, either one of you, just jump in if I miss something. So stagnant wages, student debt, housing costs, declining social status for young men without college degrees, delayed milestones, marriage, kids, stable careers, algorithmic amplification, and I want to talk about that in just a second. Platforms reward provocative content. You're being lied to. Messaging performs very, very well. Gradual escalation from self-help to grievance to ideology. On the algorithmic amplification piece, Wired magazine last year did a story on social media influence, and they did a breakdown of some of the larger creators that were out there in social spaces, both red and blue, conservative and liberal. And they sort of started by identifying some of the names that we know. If you look at this, you can see, even if you break it down by individual creator, on the blue, there's names on here that some of us know. Like you'll see Harry's name on here. You can probably add Walter Masterson's name is on here. You might be able to add the Midas Touch on here. And then when you compare that to the algorithms on the right, it's dominated by names that we know. And then when you do the overlap, you can see where, from the social media perspective, you put Charlie Kirk's name up here as well. We're losing the fight. So because people are not, especially people in this particular age group that are being targeted for red pilling, this is where they're getting a lot of their information. We think about Turning Point. Turning Point and what Charlie Kirk did, sadly, was very successful at what it did. It recruited a lot of young men, and through red pilling, in my opinion. So I think this was a very interesting, it's a great article. You can find it. I'll post it in the Discord when I get the title of it. But I thought that was really interesting, especially as we're talking about it from the algorithm perspective. So Adi, Ash, comments on that, or we can just dive right in.
Yeah, no, we can dive right in. I think podcast bros have been a concern of mine for a long time on the younger generation. And like you said, people can get red pilled later on in life. And I think, Adi would agree as far as like education goes with young boys, and sort of finding a way to play against what they're going to hear. They're going to see memes that say women belong in the kitchen. They're going to see that trolling on the internet. And it's all packaged up in self-help, right? Because what's better than listening to somebody say, this is how you can better yourself. but that's just how they get you in.
Yeah, the supplement industry, I think, capitalizes on that as well, right? The gym bro supplement industry. So Adi, I want to, if we could, maybe it's a good place to start. I'll just go by the information that you provided, Ash and I, which was great. I think from your perspective in your education and what you've seen, what would you say red pill is?
Well, one, just going back to the image you have, that's red pill right there. That is the image of one of the pieces of the red pill pipeline. And just for transparency, I want to be very transparent with everybody. That is one of the largest tenets of white supremacy, right? I think everyone has a misunderstanding of what white supremacy is. You associate white supremacy with like the Triple K and white hoods. But white supremacy is way more vast than that and way more complex and way more in-depth in our society than what you perceive it to be. And so one of the parts of white supremacy is scapegoating, right? That it's someone else's fault, right? It in terms of like why are you not rich, right? It's because the immigrants are taking our jobs and things like that, instead of actually looking at what's really happening in the issues with capitalism. It's the Black people or things like that. So when we're looking at the red pill pipeline, the whole key part of that is blaming women and representing people and marginalized identities for the woes. And that's why in the red, you saw all these big conservative spaces, because that's what they do, right? We know Charlie Kirk, one of his last words were targeting Black people and trans people, right? And they resonate with that because the woes of our society are Black and trans people's faults. It's the lack of the conservative mindset and traditional families, which are all ideals coded in white supremacy. And so when they keep connecting with people with that, and for them, that's easier to make sense than maybe I need to look within myself and learn to love myself, then that's the easier thing to feel. And this is one of the things that now going into education or education system, connecting it to what Ash said in Littles, one of the easiest emotions to feel is anger. It is very easy to be mad. It is very easy to be angry. And it's very easy to put those outlets of anger onto others and to continue to scapegoat. So altogether, when we're looking at red pill is essentially, and just to break it down even in simpler terms, they believe that this world is a woman's world. We live in a gynocracy is how they would put it. But they have to learn to navigate within it. This is where pickup artists come into play and things like that, where they teach incels how to manipulate women to do the things that they want, to lie to women, to do all these things that are very harmful. So that is what Red Pill is. Fresh and Fit podcast is part of that Red Pill pipeline. The Whatever podcast is part of that pipeline. And also, very simply, when we're talking about algorithms, gym videos, workout videos is actually the start.
Yeah, like this, as we touched on briefly, the supplement industry, that's big. I was reading about that, and it's part of the draw to RFK, quite frankly. It's that whole counterculture. I don't need the mainstream. I need alternative. It's almost being a part of something. They talk about there's this old strategy in selling a long time ago where a successful sales technique is to want to include, like, clients and just human nature. People want to be part of something. Like, I want to be part of the club. Listen, we have a new product. The coolest people in town are now buying it. It's a play. It's manipulative for sure, but it's a strategy and tactic that the red pill community is using. Something you said too, and I want to get both of your opinion on this. I've talked about this before, and it's kind of a weird thing, but it seems like society only accepts two emotions from men. I'm not accepting, but those are the ones that are the most prominent: anger and lust. So all the other elements of human emotion from men, from my perception, has been told that it's weakness. Would you guys agree with that?
Well, yes. and men seem to care more about what other men think. And so lust is going to be tied to what they can gain from a woman and what they see from a woman. And in Red Pill, it's all about transaction, labor, a set of rules that you can dominate if you improve your status and if you gain all these things and follow like an outline. And they don't look inward. It's tied to what they can gain from somebody. And if you look inward, that's seen as weak. I mean, we hear men call other men names. If they, even if they are nice to a woman, they call them weak. Because that seems like they're letting their guard down. They're simping. So yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. And I think that that's coming from other men. And when women tell men that's not what we want, or that's not, they don't believe us.
Patriarchy.
Yeah, that is the principle of patriarchy, and a lot of people don't recognize that patriarchy says that only what men say have value, right? And so you have to listen to other men. And we do have studies. There are studies that show what women do want in partners, which is they want just stability. You know, that comes with financial stability. I think anybody wants that, right? They don't want to have to take care of someone. They just want someone to build with and co-create with. And they don't want to have to like drag you along. I think that's any adult wants to be in a relationship with another adult. But when we look at outside of financial stability, they just want emotional stability too. And that's just not what we're seeing. But when women verbalize that word, we're called, no, you don't. No, you don't. You want me for my money. And we're called gold diggers and all these. Yeah. And we're called all these things. And so when only men's input is valued within society, it's like, oh yeah, no, she is a gold digger. Oh no, she is, all she wants to use for this. Then you just become, you literally, and I hate this word because TikTok has made it into like a terrible thing, but it becomes an echo chamber of just men feeding off of each other and quite frankly, harming each other because they're not actually listening to what's happening and what's actually being said to you.
Yeah, I think they've made, sorry, some of y'all probably heard like the 666 rule, or it's something I had never heard until men started telling me that they were hearing it. And it was only on these podcasts that we want 6 figures, 6 feet, and I guess 6 inches. I don't know. That's what they said. But like that's something men tell men, right? If they'll say, well, she didn't like me because I'm short. It's like, no, you were shitty and you happen to be short. And so finding those things and saying, this is what women want. This is the prescription of what women want. If you're not any of those things, which a lot of men aren't going to be 6 foot tall and make over 6 figures in their early, 20s or whatnot. Right. So they're already set up to fail. And then they can blame that instead of the fact that they weren't emotionally equipped to be in a relationship or they didn't communicate. They can just say, well, I was short, or I lost my job, or whatever. And they're able to shift. And it's harmful to them as well, because those aren't always attainable things to get. And it's setting them up for failure. And they're believing the wrong people. They're believing other men.
And something Adi said, I think, is interesting, especially for now we're piggybacking off of the 666 thing. It seems like even if men have, or assuming men have reached that particular status, that 666 status, and they're still not accepted, that's where the blame game comes in. It's like the society told me that if I make 6 figures, I'm 6 feet tall and I've got 6 inches or a 6-pack or whatever else, then I will be highly sought after and that women will be falling at my feet. Well, maybe you're a fucking asshole. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, and that's why I do find, and like I hope the men who are listening don't take this offensive. I do find it's sad for me. It does a lot of times. It's upsetting. Well, one, yes, to the harm towards women, but it's also like heartbreaking to like hear men truly not love themselves, because this is where it starts, right? You're in an echo chamber that essentially puts all your value into tangible things that can be taken away from you, right? I know this is Facts After Dark, so I don't want to be crass, but like your identity is attached around your genitals, which is really weird and inappropriate. And that's what makes you a man, when really that's not. Because if I cut it off, and I hope you guys sit and listen and internalize this, if I cut that member off, are you still a man? And I would hope you would say yes. And if you say no, then you need to sit with that and wonder why your identity is so attached to a tangible thing. If you lose your job and you lose all that money, are you then still a man? And if I would hope you would say yes. But if you say no, that you need to sit with that. Why is your identity attached to now money and again something that could be taken away from you? If you divorce your partner or you separate from your partner or you're just not in proximity to women, because a lot of men's identities are also contingent on their proximity to women, are you still a man? And I would hope you would say yes. But if you say no, then you need to sit with yourself, because all these things I've mentioned can be taken away from you. My identity, for me, is not attached to anything that's tangible to me. It's not attached to my house. It's not attached to my job. It's not attached to my money, my partner, any of these things, because I am who I say I am, and you can't take that away. But it is heartbreaking that when you ask a man, like, who is he? He says, I'm a construction worker. Why do you say your job first? Like, why is that the first thing you mention? Right? And you need to sit with that. And why is your identity so contingent on about that? And this is where we also say, like, not call it like men not going to school, because for masculinity says that masculine jobs are construction workers and trade workers. And I'm not dishing those jobs. Those are great jobs to have. But are you in that occupation because you genuinely like it? Or are you in that occupation because it affirms your masculinity and makes you feel good? But then when women are outpacing you in terms of academics, then you're going to get mad at them for that. So which is it?
Something you said that really kind of stood out, Adi, is about the, by the way, please, friends, gift our panelists for this amazing conversation. If you're just joining us, welcome. Please be kind to my co-host tonight. I appreciate that. The amount of money that's spent on the erectile dysfunction industry, billions and billions and billions of dollars annually. I mean, I think that speaks to what you're talking about, because that becomes almost like if you can't perform, then you're in many men's minds, you're not considered a man.
Well, and think about how often, I mean, producing babies is given, to people who have uteruses, right? And so when they prescribe that to us, and if that's our worth, right, without that counterpart, what's their worth, right? So it's intertwined even, right? So when they push that on us, then they are, does that mean that a man who's not fertile and a woman who is fertile and they're married, that he's valued less? Because I would say no. But according to that, we're looking at like what you can get from the other person. And so I think that there's a lot obviously tied into literally the parts that connect, especially when we talk about like red pill and nuclear families, and we get into all of the other things, man and woman, et cetera, and all of that stuff. But I think it's just a sign right there, right?
Yeah, I mean, and you touched on that, and maybe it's probably maybe this is a good spot to go back to the initial part of the conversation. I think most people in general are understanding, or at least have heard, red pilling. So, Adi, can you help with definitions for folks for incels and black pill, and so we can get into that a little bit more, because I think it's a broad topic and people just may not be aware as much. I think most people have probably heard of being red pilled, but maybe not black pilled, or what an incel is, or what MRAs or what MRAs are.
Yeah, so the whole manosphere feeds on these insecurities that I've discussed with men, right? They feed on the insecurities of those identity issues, that you're not making enough money, right? And that's where Andrew Tate got the get a Bugatti, right? That's literally your identity is attached to your proximity to wealth and money, right? That's something that's tangible. That you're not sleeping with enough women and like that, all those things. That is red pill, right? It's just feeding into what they perceive as a woman's world, and that you must get all these things. You must get a Bugatti. You must do these things. You must go to the gym and be buff. I'm sorry, fellas. Women do not like buff bodies as much as you think we do.
Dad bod for the win.
Yeah, actually though. Because to me, at this point, with how bad it is, automatically, it's hard not to associate you as like a piece of shit if you're buffed out, and that's unfortunate, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Um,
True.
that
Never thought
you
about
feel
that.
you feel safer for women representing people. You actually might feel safer with someone with a dad bod than someone that's buffed out, because for me, I know I perceive I'm more likely to be harmed with a person with a gym bod, and he's gonna call me a whore or something like that. Sorry, TikTok purposes.
It's okay. Education. Yeah, we got you.
They might put something like call me something like that than with someone with a dad bod, and that's just true. And so essentially red pill is feeding, well, all of it, the whole manosphere just feeds on off of those insecurities. The manosphere entails MRAs, red pill, black pill, all those things. That manosphere is just the umbrella term for all of it. Red pill says that this is a gynocracy and that this is a woman's world, but we can play within it, right? This is like we're incels who are individuals who are involuntarily celibate. So they are trying to sleep with women and representing people, but they just can't get access and how they believe it. And that women hold the keys to SMEX, as they would say it, and that they need to do all these things like get money to get access to women so that women can give them SMEX, essentially. So again, another way that women are dehumanized, that that they're just SMEX objects, and that women hold the keys to SMEX. And so that's what red pill does. And this is where pickup artists come into play, because they teach incels essentially what are the tools to get women, get a Bugatti. You gotta do this, and essentially lie to women about who you are to get proximity to them, which is also like not cool. Like, why do you have to lie about who you are just to get proximity to people, you know? Black pill is a very much more extreme version of that, where black pill leads to nihilism, which is basically you have no purpose in life, right? Because under patriarchy, it says your purpose is to be a provider, which is again the monetary part of it. Your purpose is to be a protector. Your purpose is to be things, and when you cannot hit all these things that masculinity and patriarchy says you must be, then you have no purpose in life. And so what black pill does is it says that you are basically destined to be, from your birth, you are destined poor and ugly, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And so because there's nothing about you can do about it, screw everything. This world sucks, and I'm gonna do terrible things. And this is where we've just had a couple of mass pewings behind black pill content, because of the nihilism under black pill. That's why this whole manosphere pipeline is so dangerous. Like, there's nothing funny about anything we're saying. There is nothing funny, because it is a pipeline to mass unalivings, to self-deletion, to whole family wipes. And so that's what black pill is. MRAs are men's rights activists, and essentially they uphold these ideals and these lies that they tell to men, that the world is against them as men, and that this is a gynocracy, and basically continue to placate into the further. They tell men that they're advocating for them, but they're actually placating to the harm that further ostracizes and isolates men. Because the thing with white supremacy that a lot of people don't understand is that when you sit in a seat of privilege, when you sit at the highest rank of that ladder of hierarchy, and patriarchy is a hierarchy that have men sitting at the top of that hierarchy is very lonesome and isolating. And so that's what red pill and all these manospheres literally prey upon, because men are so isolated at the top, and they need men to have this hyper isolated mindset, because also competition is highly glorified under patriarchy, and that you're competing with other men. So because you're competing with other men, you're also isolating yourself kind of with other men and not really building community. That
they alienate themselves like from their families and their partners through the lie of, you're tough if you work 80 hours, right? That you're believing into all of these things, even though you're not going, they're using you. You're not going to be that billionaire. You're not going to be that. And then they end up isolating, alienating themselves and their family as well.
Something you said, both of you actually, Artie. I mentioned earlier about how I think the male loneliness epidemic is contrived by men to make excuses for bad behavior. But I think when people hear the term the male loneliness epidemic, I think maybe, at least I won't speak for the two of you, but for when I hear it, I have an image. It may be somebody who is socially awkward, a little bit younger. They're not comfortable around people. They could be an incel, whatever that might be. But that male loneliness epidemic, it spans all socio-demographic conditions, all statuses in life. Whether you be a wealthy CEO or someone who's just starting their career. I mean, it's not a monolith. It spreads across all demographics. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, the amount of men that I speak to that come on and, I mean, they could be lying, right? But a lot of these men have wives and children. They supposedly have gotten all of these things, but yet they still want to come on the internet and spend their time yelling at somebody who's advocating for XYZ, right?
Right.
So, right, like if they've gotten these things, so it's not just necessarily the awkwardly shy person, right? Because just like Artie was saying, even when you've attained those things, the way you've gotten there too, right? It's all been through sort of not looking inward, just following kind of a boom, boom, boom. These are the things that have been prescribed to me. And then we see that. We can look at, we can just look at all the statistics from, suicide rates, TikTok language, schmooicide, to domestic violence. We find domestic violence to be highest inside homes that carry those traditional gender roles, and whether those traditional gender roles are met or failed, because that's the thing, right? So we see it happening even when, he goes to work, she stays home, et cetera. You've got all these things. And then you flip that over. If he's not meeting those standards, you see domestic violence come out again. We see high domestic violence when men are unemployed, things like that. So we had
patriarchy right there, right? The patriarchy there, their self-worth, right?
Right, and we had all talked to make clear too, like the reason we're here isn't to shit on men, right? Like this is not our job as a woman, femme presenting person to go and educate men. But we want to, and we want to have these conversations because I do care about men. I care about a lot of men. And so we are here to do that because these are hard truths. And hopefully, honestly, the goal of this is that people can have something and take it away, whatever their journey is. If you're a mother and you have a young child, a young boy, right? If you have teenagers, everybody's on a different journey and can probably, hopefully, take some of this and apply it to their relationships with men. And of course, Artie always comes in and goes, "Hey Ash, you know that rambling you just did for 45 minutes? There's some sources that actually back up what you're saying. Let me give it to you." So we have to say thank you to Artie for that.
It's a good segue, Ash, because Artie, your career as an educator, have you seen the needle move to younger generations of boys in particular? So are middle school boys being red-pilled now? Has that needle shifted?
So I've heard from my other fellow educators because middle schoolers are just not my cup of tea. I'm sorry.
Let's be real. Are they anybody's cup of tea? Let's be honest.
I think it takes a strong educator to you hear amongst the whole education realm, right? It takes a strong teacher to deal with high schoolers. It takes a strong teacher to deal with preschoolers and kindergartners. It takes a strong teacher to deal with middle schoolers. It's just middle schoolers are not for me, but we do, even within the different age groups that we work with, talk to each other. And the one thing I heard that was horrifying to me, even at the elementary school level, was the amount of young boys that were telling their femme-presenting women teachers to shut the fuck up.
Mm.
They were going, especially when we were at the height of Andrew Tate. Now we don't hear about him as much, but when we were at the height of Andrew Tate, them going to their women and femme-presenting teachers and telling them to shut up and stop talking to me, woman. Right? And that like understand that one of the things I also work with is media literacy, right? Because I'm a younger educator, so one of the things I recognize is the media landscape and how that plays a role in my students' lives, even as young as kindergarten, and what that looks like, what the shows that they're watching, whether they're watching Coco Melon. By the way, for the parents who put on Coco Melon, please don't. Do not believe the lies about Coco Melon. It is not good for your child. Put them on Daniel Tiger. I'm telling you right now, you'll see a difference in their.
Daniel Tiger for the win, for sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
you'll see a difference in their behavior drastically. I'm telling you. There are studies for this. And I'm a lady with a study. And how that affects that, and that these young boys, because they were on YouTube unfiltered, and just so you guys know too, like YouTube Kids is not as censored as you think it is. Just because it's YouTube Kids does not mean it's censored completely, and they don't have access to certain materials. So you really do. I highly encourage viewing, that you guys are doing things together if you're going to be on media, that you are talking about. And yes, you can talk about media literacy as young as 3 to 4 years old and what that looks like in a media landscape. You are engaging in what your children is also engaging in too, so you know exactly the content they are being viewed at. I don't think there's going to be a time where technology is going to go away. It's not. We are in 2025, but I think we just have to develop new tools to navigate kids and how they engage in online content.
It's so interesting you brought that up, because I did a show just this past week on the United States is media illiterate. So we spent 4 hours talking about it, and it covered a wide range of topics. I didn't get into children's specific programming, but we are media illiterate as a nation. I have an entire curriculum that I would love to distribute across the nation to middle schools and high schools as to how we can help our children become more media literate, because I believe media literacy then enables critical thinking, so we can navigate through propaganda, disinformation, misinformation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because it is so freaking true. It touches on so many things in our lives, so many things.
So yeah, one of the things I talk about with my teachers, because I deal with the younger ages, and because I think a lot of this starts when we're trying to get to kids, we need to get to them sooner about things. And one of the things I teach my teachers about navigating race and racism is that kids also are exposed to racist content online. And so the first thing I teach is that we can absolutely start teaching research at an early age when we're talking about media. And so this goes to kids when we're talking about the red pill pipeline as well, is to get them to ask why. I'm sorry, parents, if you're listening, your kids are should, and you should encourage it to annoy you with why questions. Why? And if they're driving you bananas, it's a good thing.
Good. Yeah, I agree.
It's a good thing. They should be driving you bananas with questions, because they're curious about the world. And I'm sorry to put that labor on you, but we need to answer those why questions. Or have the conversation of, maybe I would love to answer for you, but not right now, because right now it's not the right time. Just give them the bare minimal age appropriate answers that you can give. And then just tell them, as we get older, we'll continue the discussion. But when we're talking about media literacy at a young age, we can start to get them to say, hey, let's look that up. If you saw that, maybe an episode of Wild Kratts, because I'm big with PBS Kids. I think PBS Kids content is amazing for littles. Okay. And if they're watching Wild Kratts and they see an episode about the original Wild Kratts was around Zaboomafoo, which was around a lemur, and maybe they see an episode on lemurs. You know what? Let's look more into lemurs, and then doing research online to look at lemurs, right? So that's how we start with media literacy, is that yes, we may see something on TV, or we may see something in a video, but then let's look more into it. Let's ask questions. And then you can continue that with what they see. Maybe if they are in a YouTube space and they see something on YouTube that may be questionable, let's look it up. One of my favorite content creators around this, and this is going to throw people back, is with LeVar Burton and Reading Rainbow.
Reading Rainbow, of course. Of course.
He said a reader for life is a learner for life. And a learner for life is what I consider to be a dangerous individual, because you do not have to take someone's word for it. What he was talking about is your ability to do research, right? You do not have to listen to other people. And for people who are listening to me, you do not have to listen to me. I want you to look into everything I'm saying. I want you to practice triangulation on your own, to go look out everything I'm saying, go look it up and go find out on your own. Do not take my word for it. As LeVar Burton said, go read. Go read
right.
in whatever capacity you can read on these topics. And everything I'm coming from today, and the angle I'm coming from, is from a book called Men Who Hate Women. And it's not a book on bashing men. It's a book about the manosphere and how dangerous it is for men and women and children.
Part of our topic tonight, obviously, is breaking the red pill, with the goal being, can men love themselves? And I think that's the problem with the entire red pill movement, right? That it doesn't give men the space to actually do that, because they measure their love by their what they've acquired, their wealth, their status, their fame, their glitz, their riz. See, I can be cool. Their riz, all those kinds of things. So the ideology itself is counteracts the ability for men to love themselves. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think that makes sense. How do we start to disassemble this? I don't want to jump too far ahead, because I know we're building up to that point. But if that's the goal, right? Sorry, Jess. If that's the goal, then the system that they're in, that they're being indoctrinated into, doesn't allow that. It doesn't allow it, because that would show vulnerability. And then in the red pill world, or the black pill world, the incel world, and the MRA world, that's weakness. And society doesn't allow that.
Absolutely. And so, like I said earlier, like MRAs, like men's right activists, are the antithesis of this. Like they're saying that they're advocating for men, but they're actually just harming men and delving men further into isolation, loneliness, which unfortunately can also lead to self-deletion.
And then this does have it does leak into our politics. Like, I don't always want to turn this into politics, but we can't avoid it, because we've seen from political trends over the last 25 years that women are becoming more and more liberal at a higher rate than men are becoming more and more conservative. Men tend to be the largest voting blocks from our last presidential election. White men in particular, white women for the most part, those are the two largest voting blocks that still vote for conservative politics. So the gap is getting wider and wider, which I think would create just natural gaps. You don't align, whether it be on a dating profile. I've had people tell me that it's the first question they ask: who did you vote for? That's unfortunate that we've fallen into this space, but it's real, right? So everything sort of leads back to, what are your values? And if your values now in America to vote for what we see, I can certainly see why relationships wouldn't take off from there. We don't want it to always be about that, but sadly, because it speaks to your values. And Joe Biden said it, really, really well. Don't tell me what your values are. Show me your budget. Like, things that you prioritize should matter at the end of the day. Would you guys agree?
They should.
They don't. Sadly.
They don't. Men, I think men know this too. And this is another thing that just goes into this, is that I've heard men put on kind of they'll tell you they're riding the fence on like politics a lot of the times. I'm moderate. Then you get further into the conversation and then it comes out. And we see that every day, I think sometimes they think that they are. And then if you challenge them, it comes out, right? It comes out, and they don't like to be challenged. And especially on this app, not so much in real life or that I've experienced, they get verbally abusive when you challenge that, and they don't want to go down that route. Artie and I have experienced that together where they just flip out, and the next thing you know, and I run the topic, why aren't women's realities believed, and that, white men are a public health crisis, or that they're having an identity crisis. Because as that gap widens, as marginalized people and women are liberated, they don't need those things that men have been said, if you do these things, right? That red pill ideology will fail once we can attain all those things for ourselves. And so in order to maintain that order, we have to keep women down and keep lying to ourselves. I have to go let my dog out. I'll be right back.
Okay. Anything to add? Go ahead, Ari.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, like people don't recognize how deep this is. And this goes back to what I was saying about white supremacy, because all white supremacy is it's a mass propaganda campaign to tell you all these things, right? That men are the protectors, men are this, women are this, and you must behave in these boxes, right? And anything outside of these behavior boxes are bad and should be shunned. And so when we're talking about our political system right now, we see this wholeheartedly, that incels in the manosphere love Donald Trump. They love him. And like you can see in the book I talked about earlier, which is an amazing read if you haven't read it, especially for women and parents, please read Men Who Hate Women by Laura Bates. It gives you a real in-depth analysis of what's going on globally in terms of the manosphere and how truly dangerous it is. But one of the things it highlights is that a lot of these incels and men within the manosphere were looking up to Trump. They were championing him, especially when they overturned Roe v. Wade, and they saw how much it devastated women, right? They basked in that. They basked in the harm of women just because it spited women, right? And it took autonomy away from women. And they said, yes, this is one step for man. And they loved it. And so when we're talking about how these manosphere pipelines play into our politics, that's a huge example of that and how that was championed. They also loved the fact that Donald Trump said to grab a woman by her privates. That's something that they loved to see, to put women back in their place, to put women back into the kitchen, that women owe them smacks and that women owe them this, right? And they might not explicitly say this through their words, but we can see it through the chat forums, which I do not recommend people go look at those chat forums because they're still up to this day, and you can go look for it. I do not recommend doing it. It is extremely disgusting, disturbing. There are disgusting essays in there about harming and raping women. It's not a good place to be. But it even went to and I was talking to someone actually the other day about this. I don't know if some of the men who are listening resonate with this movement. The MGTOW movement was also huge with Mike Pence. If you don't know what MGTOW is, and I know I'm using
okay, go ahead. The men going their own way?
Men going their own way. Yes. So there are a lot of acronyms. Sorry, friends. This whole thing is way vast. And essentially, the MGTOW movement says that they center women too much and that women are a detriment and a liability, more or less, and that they need to separate themselves from women. And so this even got to Mike Pence in the midst of the Me Too movement. If anybody knows what the Me Too movement is, Me Too is when women started coming out and talking about the harm done onto them. Well, in response to that, men within MGTOW, the MGTOW movement, and Mike Pence said, you know what, instead of actually like doing better and not graping women, because that's all men have to do is just not grape and beat on women, we're just not going to be near them in terms of like meeting and like the professional place. And so Mike Pence said, he's like, the only woman I'm going to be alone with is my wife. Well, there are women who are professionals in the workplace who need to meet with you alone, sir. And he and other professionals started doing that, which cost women their jobs just because they did not want to meet alone with women, which that is not the issue. The issue is men graping women. And that's all men have to do is together make sure they understand what consent is and make sure they're not committing violations of consent towards women.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say it's almost an acknowledgement that Mike Pence and others who prescribe that particular theory can't be alone with women. That's what it comes across as, right? They're acknowledging that they can't be alone.
Well, and correct me if it's more that they're weaponizing the fact that women are harmed by men. It's like saying, well, fine, I just won't be around you at all. And so it does give that, right? But they're not going to say. They're going to say that like, well, I might just walk too close to you, and then the next thing you know, since we don't, and so they weaponize the idea of consent. Like consent is too hard. Women just do this. If this is so rampant, then fine. then fine. You just shouldn't be alone with us, rather than,
Interesting.
I do think that it might play a role in that as well. You definitely couldn't get them to admit that that's the reason why, but
Of course not.
And we have to acknowledge, like, because I do see some people in the chat saying, like, oh, these are just misogynists. All men are misogynist. When we say it's all men, it is all men. And so when we're talking about the mass propaganda campaign that is patriarchy and gender roles, we are all propagandized within these things to, even though if we may not consciously be aware of it, there's a thing called unconscious bias, right? Implicit bias that make us have these biased attitudes, especially when we have seats of privilege within those systems. So men may not be consciously aware of their aversions or their attitudes towards women, but those are all there, especially because we all engage in society. We're social beings. So we're all propagandized through TV, through commercial. A lot of people don't recognize it's the holidays. Next week is Christmas. One of the biggest Christmas songs, Baby It's Cold Outside, is a song about the violation of consent.
Sure is.
And it's a
Sure is.
normalized song. We hear it in every shopping store and mall. And so through those little repetitions, men are propagandized to those behaviors instead of actually taking accountability and saying, you know what, maybe we should actually talk about how many women are coming out during the Me Too movement. This is a problem. They said, oh, no, we're just not going to go near women anymore.
This is a bit of a non sequitur, but I think it applies to the conversation we're having now. Like I've always been an advocate for age appropriate sex ed, starting as early as possible. Talking about proper names for body parts, what good touch, bad touch is, and eventually work your way up to having conversations about consent. And I think that's a lot of the challenges. I mean, I think about that. I've read a lot about this, and I'd be curious from an academic perspective, Adi, and your point on this as well, Ash, about how, especially on the good touch, bad touch scenario, children don't even know necessarily somebody that they trust, somebody that they love. Trigger warnings. I should say that now. Somebody that they trust, somebody that they love, they may feel that's an expression of love. So again, this is back to education. And I think our entire system needs to address these things as early as possible, so that we can, first of all, avoid some of the stigmas. Westernized nations are the ones that don't want to talk about sex for some reason. Whatever, but that's a big paradigm shift that we have to have publicly, and I think with the oppression of Christian nationalists, it's going to make it even harder.
Yeah, someone said it in the chat, and they hit it right on the nose. It starts as young as diaper changing. That's where it starts, right? Consent starts when we're doing diaper changes, and we're talking about it. You should absolutely, with your little, say, hey. Obviously, if they're not at the age of talking yet, but you're communicating, I'm going to change your diaper, and you're narrating the diaper change throughout the time. This also teaches early language skills, so there are also great other benefits to this. But this is also where we start consent conversations with those little things. Part of the patriarchy is understanding that children are marginalized identities. Yes, I did say that. Children are oppressed, and they are their own marginalized group. Because imagine going through your whole day and everything being decided for you, to when you take a bath, to what you eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, to whether you're going to go do something. Your whole day is pre-decided for you, and you do not have a say in it at all. And then people wonder why that their children have little outbursts, because you're not giving them any autonomy and any choice in their lives. When we give children choice and autonomy with certain guidances and boundaries, this is where they become more successful and also start to gain independent skills. And so one of those independent skills is being able to advocate for themselves around consent and bodily autonomy and boundaries. And that starts with diaper changes and talking about diaper changes. That starts with toileting. Now with toileting, I'm a master at toileting. I'm going to give you guys the trick with toileting, okay? It's not about, at that point, asking, hey, do you want to go to the bathroom? It's, hey, do you need help going to the bathroom, or do you want to try by yourself? And giving those autonomy help, where do they want you to touch them and help them, or do they want to do it by themselves? You're giving them the autonomy and choice, but the end result is they still need to try potty training with you. Because we know at that age, their favorite answer is no. I'm not giving you the option of no, but I am giving you the options of autonomy or support, right? And then as we get older, it's not forcing your child to give grandma a hug, and grandma's gonna have to get used to it, that we can't force hugs onto children, because that's violating their body and their consent, right? Because when we continue to force consent violations down to a hug, this is where we see the manipulation and potential harm of children. And we know most rapists and predators are people within their immediate proximity that happen to be family, and they prey on those forced opportunities to harm children. So we do have to give children autonomy to say no and respect those boundaries, and respect the boundaries that they have set out for themselves.
Communication. Ash, you got a book you wanted to share?
Well, I was going to say, just we were talking about parenting. This book is called Attached at the Heart. It's 8 Proven Parenting Principles for Raising Connected and Compassionate Children by Barbara Nicholson. It's really good. And this talks about just like meeting the needs of your children like all the time. And you're basically, the idea that you're creating a weak kid or you're holding a baby too much, what you're actually doing is teaching them that they have no reason to ever feel abandoned. And so then they'll become, that's how they actually become independent, is that you meet their needs. But it's a great book. Just since we were talking about
for those of you who are just finding us here on a Friday night, thank you for being here. I want to thank Adi and Ash for joining tonight. Please be kind to my co-host this evening on this particular topic. We're discussing breaking the red pill. Can men love themselves? And there's so many ways we can go on this particular topic. And there's a great question that you asked in the script that you provided for us, Adi. So thank you for doing the bulk of that work. It's about we were talking about the online influence, the red pill from places like, you know, the Tates and Charlie Kirk and Elon, et cetera, et cetera. The question was, how does the rise of online male-focused forums shape male self-perception?
So I said it a little bit earlier. Basically, the rise of these online forums create the echo chamber, right? Of you need to be these things, right? And it basically, for me, it's the nuclear family repackaged, just in the new online space, that you need to have a Bugatti, you need to have you need to have money, you need to have women, you need to be all these things that are just not obtainable for people. Like, most people are living paycheck to paycheck. I don't know about you, Steve. I don't know about you, Ash. I can't afford a Bugatti right now. I still have student debt.
Nope. I'm
it's
with you.
also where they go back to be reaffirmed, right? So they go back, they have a bad experience. It's where they go back and they can continue to hear that it's not your fault, it's her fault, or it's your boss's fault, or whatever the case may be, where they can shift that blame. It's that echo chamber where they don't really challenge them. And if they do challenge them, they challenge them with what they're ingrained with, right? Like calling you a P word, telling you to toughen up, right? Men will take that as self-help from other men, rather than listening to women who are saying, actually, you know, and so it's kind of crazy that they will almost take the abuse in a way from men, calling them these names to improve and gain that status, to sort of control the narrative. That's what they want to do. They want to control the narrative, the dominance. They want to have that, improve themselves to improve the outcomes.
To piggyback off of that, I think I always find it heartbreaking. There are a lot of, if you scroll through these TikTok streets, the thing that always upsets me is when I see the gym videos of men yelling at other men, like, yeah, insert fat phobic slur. Go to the gym now. This, that, and the third. Blah, 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 blah. You're so fat phobic slur. This, that, and the third. I'm not going to say it because, like, it's ridiculous. But basically berating him into what they perceive as action, when we don't like, you as an individual, there are so many things that could be underlying for why, like, people also, what we perceive as fat is also not true, right? People go off of a perception that they see someone and they're automatically like, you're fat, right? When they could be the healthiest individual in the world, right? But you, in your perception of how you are viewing their body, you see them as fat, right? And that's what I find to be ridiculous about fat phobia, because fat phobia and these things are making judgments off of people as if they're unhealthy. When are you their doctor? No, you don't know. And because in your eyes, their bigger body, they're automatically fat and unhealthy, when that's not necessarily true, right? And this is where we start to have these terrible body images of ourselves, and this is for men and women alike, where we have these terrible body images of ourselves because society tells us that what they perceive as fat is unattractive and it's unhealthy, when that's again not true. This also goes into children and fat shaming children. For me as an educator, I don't even talk about the food in terms of like healthy food versus junk food, because that creates an unhealthy relationship with food from the beginning with them.
Right.
I talk about sometimes foods and all the time foods, because you need sugar. Your body needs sugar. And so when people keep talking about sugar junk, it creates a negative association with that, as if sugar is bad for you, when your body actually needs sugar.
That's an interesting. Words matter. I love that. Obviously, taking something that's a necessity, trying to remove stigmas, because what we're discussing today. Something you both said, I think, is fascinating. I want to unpack it a little bit more. The manosphere's goal is to convince men that status, achieving things, acquiring things, is the key to, for lack of a better term, getting more women. And from the conversations that I've had, and from listening to the two of you and other great creators that I respect, it's not what women want, obviously. So the entire agenda for the manosphere is to ultimately drive a wedge between men and women. It seems like that's the goal, almost, in a strange way, right?
I think, yeah. I think once you,
maybe not a goal, maybe a byproduct, I should say.
I think it's a byproduct too. Once you get further down, like into the more extreme behaviors and that nihilistic, like defeatist attitude, like burn it down as I go down, which the whole black pill thing is sort of ironic, because they say that they're genetically, set up to never find anybody, yet they do still sort of strive and continue to do those things. So it's a contradiction at the same time, because of like looks maxing and the idea that they look a certain way, their hair, their eyes, the way, all the things. But yeah, I mean,
I think just to bring us back also to the main point is that these things they feed off of men's insecurities. Someone said in the comments, absolutely agree, they are absolutely doing it to make money off of you. They, like Andrew Tate, is absolutely making money off of the insecurities of men. And so if they keep feeding into it, you're going to buy their programs and you're going to do it. But the same thing applies to Jenny Craig and all those things. I can't stand programs like Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig, because they're just feeding off of your insecurities and just telling you that, again, fat is ugly and your body's ugly and who you are is ugly and all these things. And these things are also rooted in white supremacy. Fat phobia is rooted in white supremacy. These images of what we perceive to be beautiful and the beauty standard is rooted in white supremacy. And so when you understand that and you recognize that what they perceive to be beautiful is actually something rooted in something that's extremely harmful and hatred, this is where we start to learn to love ourselves, right? That maybe I am okay the way I am. And if my doctor says I'm healthy and my body's healthy, then that's all that matters, right? And maybe it's not about the money, that I as long as I'm living comfortably, or as long as there's food in the fridge, then I'm okay. And it doesn't need to be all these things. And even if I don't have money, am I still a good individual? And am I happy with myself? I would hope you would say yes, right? Because money's going to come and go, especially under this economy, y'all. It's getting scary out here. And so money is going to come and go, but your life and you as an individual is way more valuable than that, right? And that is the key to white supremacy and all how this works. And it puts value on individuals as if there's a dollar amount to your worth. Let me tell y'all the secret. You as the individual are priceless. You being here with us is priceless. There is no dollar amount that can amount to your presence with us on this earth. No matter how much you make, you are never going to make enough to make your worth, because you are priceless. There is nothing tangible on this planet beyond your existence that can amount to you being here. So that's the key. That is the key. There is no dollar amount in existence, and that's why it's unattainable. But they feed on that insecurity as if a dollar amount actually matters to your worth. You are priceless.
Well, because they're not telling men that. And to sort of answer your question, Steve, like, I think we're in a crucial point right now, and I think we're seeing men like freaking out, last ditch efforts, right? Just like they're drowning with their hands up. And I think through, like, there's things we're not going to be able to overcome because of legislation and who truly holds the power, which is going to be, not all men, but the high up, the elite, right? And legislation. But women really don't need men. We really don't, for the things that they think and have been able to say, this is why you need me. I don't have to work on myself. And so I think we're at this crucial point. I think that's why these conversations are important, because, and I've been saying this for a while, like they're going to have to either be lonely forever or catch up to us. And they like to say things to women like, you're just going to die an old cat lady, right? And I'm like, dude, it's not a flex that I would rather die with an animal that shits in a box than a man. It's not a flex that we're choosing, right? And then the idea that and that's the other thing, is that like the male loneliness epidemic isn't a male loneliness epidemic. It's I can't find a spouse, a wife, somebody to do my laundry for me epidemic, because I'm not in a relationship, but I have friends. I'm close with my family, right? Like, I'm not lonely. I have friends, I have relationships, I have community, and men don't get community, whether that be from their own isolation, from wherever it comes from. But they're going to have to either stay that way and keep pretending like they don't care, but they do care. They do care. The fact that they think we're lonely tells me that you're at home by yourself and you're not okay with that. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but I think these conversations are important, because I think there are men out there who do want a meaningful relationship, and they're going to have to go, you know what? Maybe I should start listening to women. Maybe I should work on myself. Maybe I am 5'6", but you know what? I'm kind of funny, right? Maybe I'm short, but I actually can grow a really good beard. Like, I don't know. Look at the other good things around you, right? Like, right. I mean, let's also be honest. Sure, we live in a world where there's pretty privilege. I get it, right? Like, yes, but we all sort of face things. It's whether or not we're willing to look at it and work on ourselves. And that's why I think these conversations are important, because it's like shit or get off the pot, right? Like, I don't care if you're lonely, because I'm good.
Just to tag on a little bit to what Ash said, just really quick. I'm so sorry, Steve.
No, go for it. Love this. Thank you.
Is we start to see the separation between the two, men and women, when women started to get their autonomy in terms of housing and their bank accounts, right? And we saw this in I think 1964. No, that's when Black women got the right to vote. It was 1970. Yeah, sorry.
70. Yeah, you're right. I know where you're going with this. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. It was 70. Correct.
Yeah, it's in the 1970. I think 1975 might be, and I might be off. There's so many dates stuck in this brain of mine. But 1970s is where we start to see that women are allowed to own houses finally, and start to own credit cards and build credit. And so this is where we start to see the final steps of women separating from men, because they can have their autonomy, right? And also with the coming of no fault divorce and things like that. And since then, this is where we've seen this drastic separation of the two genders, and the increasing duress of men's mental health, right? Because And we see this today. We can see this in conversations all the time. Me and Ash have conversations on panels with men all the time around this, where men are always saying like, hey, you need me. 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 You need me to provide for you. You need me to protect you. You need me to do all this. And that's the part that's heartbreaking, right? Because women don't really need you, right? We don't need you. Because all you gotta do is, stop raping people. But secondly,
Yeah. Low bar.
The bar is in hell.
Seriously. Exactly.
Bar is in hell. But secondly, why do you need to be needed so much? Why don't you want to be wanted? And that's the trick there, right? And instead, when and a lot of times when I'm talking with my teachers about what's the first step in equity work, what's the first step in unpacking systems of oppression, what's the first step in unpacking white supremacy, it's the self. Right? So men are so worried. And again, I told you one of their parts of their identities that their identity is contingent on as women is that stop worrying about whether you're protecting women, right? Because we women already like trust us. We know you're not protecting us. But secondly, you need to work on your self-love first. I think me and a lot of women would just appreciate that you learn to love yourself, that you stop attaching your identity to all these tangible things that we've taken away from you, and you find out who you are and why you feel this need to be needed rather than wanted. And when you do that, that will do wonders for yourself, but not only for that, for the people around you. And watch what happens with who starts to come around you, right? You can see drastic difference between people who truly love themselves and have self-love and the people that surround them and the people who don't, right? And people will naturally flock to you because they can understand that you truly do love yourself. And you begin to unpack this. And this also, when you start to love yourself, you start to treat other people differently because you start to see the world differently. And people will gravitate towards you. So the first step is stop worrying about us. Stop worrying about all these tangible things. Yeah. Start worrying about yourself.
That's just too simple, Adi. Let's be real. That's logical. That's not gonna fly. You have something to say, Ash?
Well, what you talked about earlier about online media and the podcast bros and all that. I also think that we have to sort of, like, as parents, now I don't have a son, I have a daughter, but you sort of have to, like, you can't shield them from everything, right? And so I can't remember her name, I'll find it, but there's a mom on here, and she has 2 young boys, and she shows her 2 young boys videos of, like, Andrew Tate, Nick Fuentes. And now she's already done some work prior, but she humanizes, like, a friend of maybe theirs with this. Like, how would this make you feel if they were talking about your sister or whatnot? And she makes them critically think about it. So I hate, well, here's the thing. I don't hate it, right? Like, Black parents have had to ruin the innocence of their young boys and young. So we can do it as white parents as well. And so I think that we live in a society where we have to sort of play with what we have. So that could be a tool. Like, instead of just letting your child stumble across it and hope that they ask, or that I've done a good enough job and that they're going to go, ew, that's icky, right? That we can go, look, you're going to see stuff like this. Like, what does this mean? And she does a great job. I can get the name. If anybody wants to drop it here, if they know who I'm talking about, we can. But I think sometimes you have to say, you know what, this is what we're dealing with. And I think that, boy moms have a job to do. And that's kind of what I was going on earlier, is that I don't know what the solution is and how too far gone. But I have to believe that if we keep focusing on the youth, right, people are going to die off. So eventually, it's like,
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you bring up an interesting point, and I talk about this a lot, especially in the the return to the land model of all these white supremacy communities that are popping up all across America. It makes trad wives look like feminists from the 70s, quite frankly. But it's about I can imagine the conversations in these one vote households, right? Where a lot of people like the Andrew Wilsons of the world believe that it's the man's kingdom, it's the one vote household. So, and I'm thinking about what those conversations must be like. You've got a son and a daughter, as we're talking about, just boys, don't grape women. Let's start there. We talk about how the conversation would go with their son saying, you are the leader, you are the king of the castle, it's your way or the highway. And then you turn to your daughter and say, ultimately, you need to do whatever your man says. So it starts at home. Like the diminishing of women starts at home. And I'm often asked this question, like, why do women vote for conservatives? Or why do women vote against their best interests? I don't always think it's about voting against their best interest. I think it's voting for their proximity to power, preservation of their whiteness for the most part. To talk to your point earlier, Audie, about how this entire thing is wrapped up in white supremacy. And that's not going to change unless there's a nihilistic approach to our politics, our nihilistic approach to the way we govern. I want a matriarchy. I'd love to see one before I die. I don't know if that's going to happen. But it's little things like that we looking in, I'm sure as an educator you've seen this, but we looking in say, sure, it makes perfect sense. If that's been your belief, whether it be driven by your religion or by your just commitment to the patriarchy, that's not going to change from the two of you. It's going to change. It's got to take men to make that change, realizing that they can't treat their daughters as property.
Yeah, I think overall, understanding that all these systems of oppression are hierarchical systems, and we all need to do our jobs in recognizing where we sit in those seats, whether you are the oppressed or the oppressor, and then how do we engage within those systems and unpacking them, right? So, for me, I am a cis Black woman, right? And I hold privilege in my cis identity and need to sit with that and unpack that to make sure I'm not doing harm onto trans people and my trans siblings out there. And so for men with these seats, it's really sitting there and unpacking what is, and shocker to anybody listening, I'm just a gender abolitionist. I'm gonna be very quite frank. I do believe gender overall, as soon as I get the go ahead from my trans brethrens out there and siblings, I have to recognize a seat of privilege in there. Who am I to tell trans people to say, hey, let's get rid of gender, something you fought so close to get proximity to, your gender identity? That's silly of me. But the second my trans siblings say, okay, gender overall is just a silly concept to further ostracize us and create more categories for oppression, right? It just gives you the finger to point out who is who and who is that, right? And essentially, when we saw really gender identity is created under a sociological lens, it's an identity created for the division of labor. And for women, when they create that division of labor, it's a division of reproductive labor, right? And that they're supposed to do all these things under reproductive labor. So overall, it's really sitting with what is manhood? What is being a man? And does this really benefit me? Like, is this real? And I tell people all the time, when you really sit down and look at it, gender is a cosplay, right? And it just tells us we must perform. Like, it's just a giant performance that we must perform in these ways. And it's not necessarily true that when men can be strong, so can women. And these are attributes that are single to a person. I'm like, I don't know about y'all, but I don't know about you, Steve. Can you take on Ronda Rousey? I can't.
Nope. and men on an airplane, like they imagine if the plane's going down, they could just jump in the cockpit and fly the plane and land it safely. Like, nope, not me.
Right. Audie, what do they do when women are strong? They tell them that they're masculine.
They're masculine
to be wanted.
Exactly.
And they take away their femininity, and it's just more ways to ostracize people and to further cause harm. And that honestly, gender dysphoria can happen with any of us. That's what, and Steve, you said this earlier, that's what happened with the penile dysfunction area. That is gender dysphoria when men start screaming about that, like, oh my gosh, my peen is not working anymore. And we see we see the Viagras and the blue pills, because your identity is so contingent on whether that member is working or not, that your gender affirming care is that little blue pill that makes it go up. But when you start to detach your identity from these things, you recognize that gender overall is just a more of a concept to force us to behave in certain ways. And when we don't behave in these certain ways, we're ostracized from society and others for these behaviors that aren't really always innate either.
I think it was you, Adi. It might have been you. Actually, both of you could have mentioned about the quest for community, and how it seems it's much more natural for women to assimilate to communities. Men's communities are. I played sports all through high school, Division I in college, and the community for men, it's usually involving something physical, or there is something like motorcycle clubs. I'm in one. I'm not saying nothing bad about it, but the community approach is different. I'll give you a really good example. Ash knows a little bit about this. My daughter's a 2-time cancer survivor. She's totally healthy. I remember when she was sick the first time, she was inpatient in hospital stays for weeks at a time, going through treatment. And I started to look around and noticed I was the only dad on the 5th floor where the pediatric wing is in the hospital. And I didn't really notice at the time, because I'm dealing with I've got 2 boys and my daughter's sick and fighting for her life and the whole 9 yards. But as time progressed, I noticed it more and more. And then one day there was another dad in the little playroom. And then he and I were talking, and I'm like, you ever notice how there's no more dads here? He's like, yeah, it was difficult for me to get time off work. I'm like, what's more important than being here for your sick kid? And then over time, more and more dads started to show up. My schedule shifted a little bit. I had a great employer at the time. I was able to take the time. And that turned into this men's group that I kind of started. And I asked those various questions. Why was it so hard for you guys to get here? And the script in their head was, I've got to provide for my family. Sure, I understand. I get it. But that's the script. Like, what's more important for you? What's more important than you being there for your sick kid? Everybody's situation is different. I get it. But talk about a community centered around something there should be nothing more important than that, right? And it was weird about how some people reacted to that. Some people felt almost like they were failing. My kid is sick. The only thing I can do is to make sure the bills are paid.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Like, yeah, that's sad, because I'm sure, deep down they think too, like, I can't get fired right now.
Exactly.
I can't get fired right now. And that's just, again, that lie that they have been sold, right? And we know this just through looking at studies that have been done. When you take better care of your employees, give them time off, raise their salary, they see more productivity and they see people happier, et cetera, and all of those things. It's like you said, it's self-inflicted. It's so hard to it's like trying to convince somebody, like, you don't have to do this. Like, join with us. Like, you're being used. You're being used by your boss. They should say, yes, go. Like, we have somebody else to do this, right? Working 80 hours isn't a flex.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, it's not a flex at all.
That's the most disheartening thing too. I think I heard it on Ash's panel, where there was a man like gloating that he works 70 hours a week. I'm like, sir, do you hear yourself? Do you hear yourself?
Yeah.
That's exactly what we were talking about. I was like, your company actually benefits from just paying you time and a half, instead of carrying another, especially in blue collar jobs, instead of hiring another employee, carrying insurance on them, another salary, training, possible turnover. It is more financially beneficial for them to pay time and a half, financially more beneficial. And they do that by selling men this lie that you're tough, and that people who want to just work 40 hours and go home and enjoy their family, they're weak and they're not providing.
Correct.
And the way that the way they keep that is by not paying people a living wage. We should be able to work 40 hours. So it's this whole, it's capitalism. It's all tied in there. We could we could go any direction, like you said.
Right.
It's all a lie.
God
It's a lie.
God forbid stay-at-home dads. I mean, they're shunned by the patriarchy.
And I think it does. The type of house that I grew up in, my dad was a musician, and so he played in a bar at night while my mom was in school and worked during the day, and he went on the road. But then they flip-flopped, and when she was working and he was working at night, he did all the grocery shop. He was at home, so maybe. Like I kind of saw my dad doing, he was the one that was at all my school events. My mom, she, and he supported her, and then she supported him when he was a musician. So I kind of saw both of them do that provider role. They just provided for the family when one person needed to do whatever. It wasn't gendered ever.
Because the one of the hugest, and I said this earlier, again, a tenet of white supremacy is the idea of the nuclear family. And this is to keep people further isolated. And we can see that actually with the rise of the nuclear family, the detriment to women's mental health as well that happened, because the idea of the nuclear family is two-parent households, about 2 kids or so, right? But when you took away the help of the grandparents from being in the home, women were not receiving the supports they needed at home. And you also now have men struggling in isolation too, and everyone's mental health sort of deteriorating. So men's mental health deteriorates, women's mental health deteriorates because she needs help at home with the kids and she's not getting it. But we must keep this nuclear family structure. Community is key for all of this. We're talking about all these structures and breaking white supremacy. It is community and community of unpacking white supremacist structures together. So not just building community, because we also know that people build community and then build community to perpetuate white supremacy. I'm not talking about that community.
That's true.
Even if you just look at the, like when you talk about like patriarchy, there's a reason why we don't die after we are unable to reproduce. In all other most animal kingdoms, they die shortly after because the young don't need any really help moving forward. And y'all heard me talk about how we're the only species of mammals that goes through menopause that stops us from having children that are run under a patriarchy. And that's set up that way. They stole that from us. And that's like the grandmother theory, right? There's a reason why we stopped being able to reproduce. It's because we are useful and have purpose after reproduction. And in order to demonize women to that, they would have to say that we're not useful. Whales and orcas. I know I went into I have a whole theory about like the patriarchy being stolen from us because if you look at the way the elder, it's actually the elder female orcas take the young males and then teach them how to be providers and protectors and all of that. And when I learned about that, it made me sad because I really do think that egalitarian and a matriarch was stolen from us. And it makes me sad too that we throw our elders away, right? Like, and that's what we were talking about, like the multi-generational. Like I'm very close with my parents, right? My grandparents, my parents are very close with my daughter and they help me a lot. And I mean, I could even now I want to go now. I'm going to get into like maternal health and postpartum period and all that. And we won't, but that's how we were set up to be that way. And it was really stolen from us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always say a system built by people who look like me to benefit people who look like me to protect people who look like me. And we saw that on full display with the lack of information being released today. I won't go down that particular road, but that is the system. You just described it, Ash.
W. Hector Raid.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
W. Hector Raid.
Oh yeah, thank you, Hector Raiders. Love you guys. Hearts in the chat for Hector Raiders. So part of this conversation, I think we've done a really good job. I mean, and thank you both again for helping us guide through the incel side, the manosphere, the all layers to that, all connected to white supremacy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What we're hoping to accomplish here is giving men permission, so to speak, to love ourselves. So you touched on this a little bit, Adi, but what does it mean for a man to love himself in the context of masculinity?
Really sitting there, and I touched on it earlier, like sitting there and asking, what one of my favorite questions, and men who try to debate me, good luck men who try to debate me, but the men who try to debate me, one of the questions I ask them, what is being a man exclusive, what is like an exclusive trait only men can have that women cannot? And shocker to them, they can't name it, right? And this is where I start to explain that manhood and masculinity is a cosplay, right? This idea of masculinity is a cosplay, and that you are playing up to what you perceive to be masculinity to the detriment now where we, one of the tenets of masculinity is violence, right? And I think it was alluded to earlier when we're talking about rape and harm, and even harm to each other amongst other men. It is one of the biggest tenets of masculinity is violence and competition. And that's how you maintain that hierarchical status, is the threat of violence. And then violence onto oneself. And violence looks like many different forms, right? Violence isn't just the physical violence, it's psychological, it's monetary. And so it's understanding what that word violence means and what that looks like. And so really unpacking that anything that truly is associated with these ideals of masculinity are truly harmful ideals, like the worst ideas of masculinity. And then they're telling you to play into that. And then you're wondering why you're like, oh, there's these attacks on men. There's these attacks on men because the idea of what a man is rooted in harm. But do you have to be like that is the question. And the answer, I would hope we can all agree, is no. Right? You do not have to be like that. And the thing that, and shocker, guys, shocker for anybody who's listening, I have a lot of hats amongst an educator on racism. I taught littles. My degree is also in biology. And let me tell y'all something really quick too. There is nothing in a male's biology that makes you violent either, right? Because I also hear this too, which is heartbreaking for me, is that, oh, it's innate in us. It's in our DNA. It's not. It is not. There isn't a violent gene. Your hormones don't make you violent, right? They'll associate testosterone with violence. Testosterone is associated with aggression, but aggression is emotion. And right, and when we see women and femme-presenting people with PCOS who do have escalated amounts of testosterone, they're not perpetuating increased amounts of violence when because they have PCOS, right? That is something that's socialized and normalized amongst men, is that violent culture. And this violence can be combated. It is something in that you have the power to change. You just have to recognize your power and change it, right? You are not, I need men to stop infantilizing themselves as if they have no power to change this violent culture when you do. And this as of Harvard, because again, I'm a gal with a study, it only takes 3% of a population to enact change. 3%.
That's right.
Which is why I think we're seeing what we're seeing, because a large percent of women and femme-presenting people are fighting back, and marginalized people in other areas as well. Something that I ask men on my lives is something just as simple too as like, tell me something you like about yourself outside of like productivity and dominance, or even just asking them to describe masculinity without using like productivity and dominance. Because if those are the only two things, those like, you know, and it's just silly things. I'll say, don't you want to be more than the man who built this house? Because I bought this house.
Yeah.
So, right. Yeah. So like, and it's right. So don't you want to be more than somebody who pours concrete? And I don't mean to, you know, be silly, but I even will just ask, I'm like, name me 3 types of hammers. And if they can't name 3 hammers, I drop them and say, well, you can't build me a house, so you're not worthy to me. And I know that sometimes that's sarcastic, and but you can't play so hard into this and then blame us for everything or get mad when we call it out, because
right.
They desperately will try to not have the conversation, but sometimes they do. And I do want men to be more than that. They're more than swinging a hammer.
Yeah, and my thing is too is what if you're not good at that? Like, what if you're just a shitty hammer swinger?
What if you don't want to? What if you want to dance?
Right.
That's right.
And we need other men to say that that's okay. That doesn't make you a sissy or whatever, right? Like,
Exactly. Exactly.
it's just.
And so this is why I'm like a full proponent of egalitarianism and partnership, right? Like if your partner is making more than you at home, that is okay. If the woman in your household and the women in your household are making more money than you, guess what? That is okay. Maybe that's just the occupation she has, and that doesn't make you any less of a person, because we should focus on, rather than everyone's performing, I think performance is wild. None of us should be performing. I think we should just be playing up to our best skill sets. It's recognizing what those skill sets are and playing to our best attributes, right? Maybe my partner who is mass presenting, maybe he's better at cleaning than I am. Guess who's going to be cleaning then? He is.
Yeah.
Because he's better at it, right? Why not?
It seems so simple, right? I mean, even little things about how society says that men can't compliment, cis men in particular, cis hetero men in particular, can't compliment another man on their appearance. For example, if you say that, that's an attractive man or that's a handsome man, whatever that would look like, that is just lands so poorly on so many people, which is so strange. But that's a different conversation. But I think it's related, and I think. This may be a simple question, obvious question for the two of you, but the ability for men to be vulnerable, like what do you think is holding men back from being vulnerable? Is it? I was going to say, is it the patriarchy? Is it homophobia? Is it all the above?
I think there's a lot of things. Speaking about like the complimenting or. I think there's a lot of homophobia going on, and that's going to go into, because when we talk about these hierarchies, we're going to find them in places like religion. And so then we're going to talk about purity culture. And then we're going to talk about shaming from a young age. So you're going to have a demographic of young men who are gay and will hate themselves and hate other gay people before coming out. And we see this all the time. And that's how we know that it's not a choice, right? Because of right, that if you could just make somebody be that way, we wouldn't see kids from straight Christian homes finally coming out and saying this. But I think it's tied partially, definitely into homophobia, and then just the hatred of women, because the roles of being weak and being emotional and being vulnerable are tied to women. The worst thing that you could be is a woman. That's what little boys are hearing when they hear. When they have an emotion and they say, suck it up, or you run like a girl, or stop crying like a girl, and they're feeling a real way. They're having emotions because they're real emotions. And they hear that you're acting this way. What you're telling those little boys is the worst thing that you could be is a girl. And then they grow up with that.
I think another part to it that a lot of people actually hate hearing, and this is for anybody regardless of gender, I don't think a lot of people like to sit with themselves. They do not like sitting with themselves. That when you're forced to sit with yourself, you're forced to think about these things and reflect. And a lot of people don't like what they see in the mirror at the end of the day because of, one, what society tells you, but also then you have to sit with the things that you have done, and you have to come to terms with the things that you have participated in. And I think the hardest thing for people to recognize is, I had to sit with this myself. We are not going to be the heroes in everyone's story. Sometimes we are the villain, right? And we need to make amends with that we are. I probably played the villain in someone's story too, that I have not always been the best person. And I always have not been the kindest person. And I have to sit with that, sit with the harm, and recognize, how do I heal it now? And how do I grow and be a better individual? But a lot of people, and this is what gets sad for me too, and this is why I want to talk about also that community aspect, because a lot of men build community, but it's not even community. One, it's a community in like more violence towards women. That's when I see men collectivizing and like, yeah, let's go troll the women, and let's go like show our PPs on Ash's Live, which is like a real bad thing that's happening on TikTok a lot now. Let's go do that. Or let's go do giant sock puppet accounts towards feminists to shut the feminists up because they're talking about harm towards women and men and how the patriarchy is harmful to both genders and children. That this is where I see men collectivizing. Or they'll say, you know what? No, I know how to heal myself. I'm going to go to the gym all the time. Right. But again, sure, the gym is a nice place. I'm not saying not to go to the gym, but where do you just sit with yourself? You're putting all your energy into all these other outlets and all these other projects. You can sit at home with yourself and sit and reflect for free. And a lot of people cannot do that. And they will find any other way outside of sitting with themselves to avoid sitting with themselves and reflecting.
White men. Sorry.
I was going to say real quickly, there's an interesting comment, and Angie, I think I know your intention, but your comment was a strong male influence for a young man is so important. Now, a person would read that as, what do you mean by that? A person of strong character. A person of strong character is a positive influence for a young man in their life. Right? The most influential person in my life was my mother. The most strongest charactered person I've ever met, without question. So I think that's something, again, Angie, I understand your intent, but that would be an example of the things we've discussed here about labeling strong male, right? Strong, I mean, that has connotations that may be perceived as negative, depending on how you,
or just what is strong,
how you see it. Exactly.
It's because who's the receiver, right? So
exactly.
A boy who's been told that strong means XYZ, all the toxic things, so who's receiving the word strong, which is why it's important to kind of, I was going to say that I think, like, just as an encouragement, sorry, Artie, just one thing, with what you were talking about is like sitting with yourself, like, let's be so for real too, right? Like white men, especially white men, they're going to have the most to unpack.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard work. So nobody's saying like all you have to do is go in and look inside you and go, I want to be better. Okay, I can be better. Like it's going to take hard work. And like Artie said, like I also, right, as a white woman had to sit uncomfortably and make mistakes over the last decade of my life, learning that I don't get to label myself things. I have to do things, I have to learn, et cetera, et cetera. I like that word, et cetera.
I also want to break down real quick, and a lot of people don't recognize this, and it's okay. Even when we apply the word strong and even how it was just applied, I want to tell y'all a secret, is also rooted in white supremacy.
Sure it is.
Because it does not grant people rest and softness. Right? When people always say the words, because this is always used against Black women. Let me tell y'all something. Do not ever say that to a Black woman. Do not ever say that to a Black women are so strong. Do not say that. Please do not. That is probably one of the most racist things you can say to a Black woman. Because white supremacy is this idea of constantly moving, constantly going, constantly doing this. Boss up, babe. This, that, and a third, and you must have all this strength.
Yes, Angie, I heard. Sorry. Go ahead. My bad.
You must have
to clear something up. Go ahead.
Yeah, you must have all this strength. You must be strong. You must do all this thing. When what I want for people in true liberation, and because also this idea of strong is also comes from a capitalistic mindset as well, which is also white supremacy, is people deserve rest. And that's what I also want for men, right? That's when you're glorifying this. I worked 70 hours this week. Babe, when was the last time you took a nap? Like seriously. Like when was the last time? It's not. When was the last time you had rest? When was the last time you cried? When was the last time you did this?
You hung out with your children or your partner? Even that. When was the last time you were able to sit down and have a simple conversation if you're working 80 hours a week? You can't have any meaningful...
So when we
or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, so when we're talking about this word strong, I replace it with human. Because we're not robots, right? When people are giving this idea of the word strength and all these different things, it's always attached to like basically we're robots just functioning. They need human role models?
Right.
When are we bringing humanity back to people? When are we humanizing people? We need to be human. They need human role models, and humans have emotions, and they're raw and authentic and vulnerable, and we have squishy skin that makes us soft, and that is okay.
Get W dad bod again.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So a lot of folks have, I don't know if you guys want to, maybe we can go for a few more minutes, and then a lot of folks have requested. I mean, I think it'd be okay. We guys okay if we had some people come up and want to ask questions? You guys good with that?
I'm going to pause and use the restroom. I'll be right back.
Go for it. Go for it. And again, everybody, thank you for being here. Again, please gift our amazing panelists. The topic, obviously, tonight, if you're just joining us, breaking the red pill, can men love themselves? We've covered a lot of areas, and there's so many nuances to this conversation, and we're going to try to address it all. We may decide to do this again with like part 2 or part 3 or part 5 or part 10, because it could go all day. Something that you both said, that again, this community piece, and I know you said you wanted to touch on that a little bit more, Adi, but it seems like there is this, well, as we're pack animals, humans in general, we're not really designed to be on our own. Physiologically, that's not how we are created. We're created to become tribal in a way. But for some reason, I grew up an only child, so I'm used to being by myself, travel the country by myself many, many times. I'm really comfortable in that space. But a lot of people aren't. A lot of people aren't in that space, which I think is the danger of these online communities, especially these subreddits and these dark web spaces, because it creates this community. It's fake. It's artificial. It's not real. It's not nurturing, but it's there. Is that perhaps a draw?
Yeah, and that's why, because it basically it validates all these things that allow for scapegoating, right? So like the immigrants are taking our jobs, right? It allows for scapegoating of what capitalism actually does, right? And so that people can continue to perpetuate capitalism, and all the harms of it and woes are now put onto brown and black people and those who aren't U.S. citizens, right? And so it just keeps scapegoating the problem down to where all that's going to happen is, sure, you can when you take all that away, right? Guess who's going to be left? And you're going to be pointing at whose fault it is. You're going to be pointing at yourself in the mirror, right? And that's all that's going to happen. So, really just sitting and reflecting with yourself that it really is, it's media literacy is the most important part. Please stop.
What do you all think? I was thinking about this today. Along the lines of this, I was thinking, I see more progressive creators doing solo shows or one-on-one debates, and MAGA lives are always full panels with like one. And I think that it's because when you're trying so desperately to hold on to a lie, you can't hold on to that lie by yourself. You have to go back to those places where everybody around you is like, yeah, that's right. Or everybody's searching for the bias to help support you, because we collectively are not the reason why women don't want us. We collectively are not the reason why we're under fascism, right? Like, and so I don't know if you've all noticed that, but I was just thinking about that today. And you don't see very many right-wing people doing, I mean, you do, but not the same way I think the left presents and operates.
Have I talked to you about that? Because I agree.
No.
I mean, when you troll, well, you're part of our little TikTok group, and that's what you see when you go to these spaces, right? And I think it's community, since we're discussing community, but it's a community based on the commonality of lies, misinformation, and sadly, hate and rhetoric. And I think you're right. They need each other to perpetuate and support the lie. Because if they're in there by themselves, it makes it difficult to defend their own belief set, right? Yeah. Which is, I understand why people get agitated and get angry about it, because when you're confronted with an oppositional opinion that people can back up with facts and evidence, then we can see why people get angry and yell and scream and rage quit. quickly.
We also have to take our part in community and recognizing, and this is one of the things I'm big on, that the average reading level of an American adult, which is an individual above the age 18, is a 6th grade reading level, right?
6th grade.
6th grade, which is abysmal. And I have to take accountability for that as an educator. And this is one of the things I'm working to address when I'm addressing white supremacy and racism in our education system, that this is what is factually happening. And with that is the ability to critically think around these issues. And so it is our job for people who have access to education, who can think critically around studies and things like that, to basically bring it down to layman's terms for people who are not at that literacy level, to understand indigestible pieces of information, to help bring them up to scale and help bring reading levels amongst adults up higher. Because I want, if anybody takes anything away from me today, it is that LeVar Burton quote, that a reader for life is a learner for life. And a learner for life is what I consider a dangerous individual, because you do not have to take someone's word for it. Unfortunately, in those conservative lives, they have to take each other's word for it because that's all they have, right?
Yeah, right. And they're
Stay dangerous, stay literate, and help people catch up in terms of literacy. Reading is power. Why do you think one of the first things they did was defund education? Why do you think they're attacking books and they've been attacking literacy for a long time? Because knowledge is power. One of the things I do in terms of TikTok, if you see it in my bio, is I run a book club because of how important literacy is, and having people and reading together. And then we unpack what we read together to get different perspectives on how we receive the information we read together.
And that's a big thing, Artie, is receiving the information. Something that I've learned over the last year is that while communication is important, you have to know who's receiving it too. So it's important that we teach people to understand it. But I learned that lesson when I debated Pearl. I didn't study her. I went in as Ash with facts, but I wasn't debating somebody who was going to debate me in facts. And so, so as communicators as well, we have to. That's why I've stopped not letting Philbro language on my live, which you're not going to convince me otherwise. Philbro language is just an extension of misogyny. It's another way to try to overtalk, intellectually dominate through language that nobody else. I've been preaching this for years, and just it 100% is rooted in all of that. We've talked about that, and so. Literacy is important, but communication is important as well. And you won't convince me. I don't think those Philbros know what they're talking about. I really don't. They can't tell you in their own language.
One thing, and I'll bring up some guests after this. I noticed in these right-wing spaces, we have this running joke in our community, like, I'll go to right-wing lives so you don't have to. You're welcome. But what I've noticed is there might be one person on the panel that is actually speaking factually, and then everybody else on the panel jumps on that person and they change their mind because they did not want to be the outcast. And it's just I've seen it happen too many times. I'm thinking that person's actually speaking the truth. Even they might have a strange right-wing, crazy ass bullshit racist background behind them, but they're talking about something that's actually factual. And then members of their little community just pile on and say, no, you're wrong about that. That's fake news or left-wing talking points or whatever else. So we've got a few folks that have requested here. We'll start bringing some folks up. There's a lot of people that have requested, so if we could just ask, we kind of make it a particular topic or a question that you have for our panel. Thank everybody for being here. Natalie, thanks for being here. What's on your mind?
Hi. I absolutely love this topic. My main thing is something, Steve, I know you've heard me say before, but different audience might not have heard before. I did find that documentary that I have recommended before, The Mask You Live In. It's on YouTube and you get it through Hoopla, but I highly, 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 highly recommend, and I think it'd be great for a movie night on Discord. It's a really great documentary about toxic masculinity in America. And it takes it all the way back into, like toddlerhood, like from being young, to, till we grow up. And it really looks at all these different angles that we've been talking about. And I just think it's incredibly important for everybody to see it. It's an hour and a half long, but it's got a lot of great information. And I just think it's necessary. Everybody in America should watch it.
What was the title again, Natalie?
The Mask You Live In.
The Mask You Live In.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we will absolutely note that. Thank you for that. Did you have a question, or did you just want to make that comment?
I just wanted to make that comment, and I love this topic. I would be totally down for part 2 and part 20.
Thank you for being here. I
Yes,
appreciate
of
you.
course.
Have a good night. Be safe out there.
Thank
All
you.
right. I mean, there's no. I mean, I think about idiocracy, and I think about all these things. And I've been doing a lot of research recently on these RTTL, Return to the Land community, and it's so scary to me because they advertise, they're so loud about their obvious racism. I mean, they brag about it. And I worry about the susceptibility of people being drawn into something because, again, the quest for community, going after young white men and young white women, and then forming this community. Strict rules about courting needs to be approved by the community. It's scary as hell.
Something that, and you can bring some, but I wanted to mention earlier is the counterpart, and is how they're targeting young women with the stay at home, the glamorizing what it's like to be a stay at home mother, right? Like that's not feasible for a lot of parents or families.
Right.
And it's glamorized online and just ingrained as well, and they need to do that. Right? They need the women to fall in line. So they're brainwashing them that way as well. And that's just tied in the free labor that you're getting from women when you keep them home.
Agreed. Rev, thank you for being here, friend. Nice to see you again. What's on your mind tonight?
Yeah, good to see you too, man. I haven't talked to you in a while. So actually, to the answer to the question, can men love themselves? I think yes. However, I think one of the biggest problems is, as a cisgendered man, is in the end, it's easier to blame everything than accept accountability. And one of the perfect examples, and again, it goes to what you're talking about with being vulnerable. So, so ever since my divorce, I have had just terrible luck with the dating world. Yeah, I couldn't seem to map it out, and just kept getting into really bad relationships and stuff like that. And then, of course, one thing I've noticed is that I am halfway to loving myself completely. I'm halfway there because I also, as much as I love myself and I know I love myself, I'm the one person I don't want to hear call me out. So, you guys were talking about lust and anger. In the end, to me, those come back to pride. When your pride gets hurt, that's when you start lusting. That's when you start getting angry.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
Say is like that's one of the biggest things that we see what happens with and there's actually, because you guys know I'm a gal with a study, there are studies for this, for threats to masculinity, and especially when it's done in public, right? And that when a man's pride is attached to his masculinity, right? And then when his masculinity is under threat, that's when we see the violence, right? This is where we see and understand that rape is a crime of power. So establishing dominance again, and putting women or the person that you're doing it to back in their place within society. And so absolutely, when your masculinity is under threat, men need to recognize where they first go to, and it typically is violence of some sort, whether it's verbal violence. Yes, verbal violence is a thing. Calling women 304s and all that stuff is a form of violence onto women, or all these things, or those things, and also reflecting on what threatened your masculinity too.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, and Steve can attest to this because I've been pretty open with my vulnerability, is I think for me, at least for me, I at least recognize the problems that I have. Now, the anger towards anybody is always at myself. I really try to not get angry with anybody else because I understand that the problems I have are my own and I need to fix them. But going back to that idea of vulnerability is, so there's this lovely lady. She and I have started texting, and we're getting to know each other. But we were having a conversation the other day. If I hadn't have opened up to her and been vulnerable, but also listened to what she had to say, I wouldn't have been able to make that own correlation to myself. And that was, she said that one of the hardest things that she was having in the dating world was that, unfortunately, her husband passed away relatively recently. I think it was 2 years ago. And she said that, she goes, the problem I have in the dating world is I don't know how to be a girlfriend. And I was just like, holy shit. That I don't know how to be a boyfriend. I spent 17 years being a husband. And being a husband and being a boyfriend are two separate things. Expectations are different. How you act is different.
And what is
So
really
I
different?
find,
What is really different about it? I want you to sit with that. What is actually really different about it? Because is it
well,
different?
the way I look at it is, I think, at least from my own perspective, this is my own perspective now. I looked at, I guess, looking back at when I was being a boyfriend, there was this salesmanship that I had to give about myself. And when I became married, that I didn't have, it was like, I didn't have to sell myself anymore. Now I needed to learn how to be a good companion, how to be a good partner, how to be a good listener, because I think, when we talk about providing, it's not just monetarily. You've also, if you want to help provide for somebody, and it goes both ways, you have to be able to open yourself up and, and have those emotions, have those talks. You have to, learn how to be able to give your heart to somebody, not just your money.
I think you
And
actually just personally also stumbled on something to sit with in yourself already.
absolutely, yeah.
Because what you're even prescribing is the performance of being a girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, husband, right? That you're prescribing performances, right? When really you're just should be authentically yourself from the jump, right? It should not have to be in any regards a performance, right? And that they should take you for who you are entirety without quorum or problem. And if they do not, then that is a them problem, and that we are all not made for each other, right? And I know
absolutely.
I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I read too much and I got way too many opinions for everybody. So it's really, even looking at that, the performance of girlfriend, boyfriend, is that a necessary performance? For me, I would argue no.
Yeah, the language to just like selling yourself, right? Like the idea
Well, I
of,
mean, that was the best way I could describe it. I mean, it was,
well, right. Well, for sure. And those are just those little things when you think about it. You said that because there is truth in that. It's part of what we described tonight, that men do think that if I can portray to this person that I have all of these things, then
right.
And that's that sales aspect, right? But really, like,
Right.
why would you want to sell yourself to somebody before if you're compatible, just like Artie's saying, right? So why would you wouldn't want to sell yourself to somebody who then in turn you're going to go, oh wait, crap, I actually don't really even like who they are.
My thing is, I'm not selling myself for shit. I'm sorry. I'm not. Like, you just gonna like me for me. I'm not selling you on shit, right? You get like my when people get me, you get all of me. You get that I'm very opinionated. I will cuss a motherfucker out in public for being racist. So who I am on this app is who I am in real life. And yes, I've gotten in fights out all these because someone was being racist, right? So like, and if you don't like that, that's fine. I'm gonna keep it pushing. You shouldn't have to sell yourself. They should take you for who you are.
I was gonna say, Rev. I mean, you and I have spoken before, and I would consider you a friend. And one of the things, you're a handsome, smart. You're a handsome, smart, kind, empathetic man.
Oh, I'm 6'5", a beefy, sexy man. Yeah,
I understand. You are. I totally agree, and I like what I like what both Adi and Ash said. The way I look at it, it's been a long time in the dating world for myself as well. But I want to be who I am whenever I am, whomever I'm with. I think I don't like the fact that you feel like you have to sell it. I understand what you meant, but don't. Just be yourself. Just be yourself in whatever environment you're in.
But I also acknowledge that these are my issues. I'm not
They
blaming
are,
anybody
but
else.
the thing is, and why it's good that you're talking about these things though, is kind of like I said, you have a giver and a receiver, right? And so
Right.
little girls and women also vice versa, right? We sort of sometimes we play off of each other, right? Some of that indoctrination and that internalized misogyny that women have is, well, these are the things that men are going to try to sell me on or what they want, right? And so I'm going to play into those things, and that's where like I might sexualize myself before they know who I am, because I think that, well, if I can sexualize myself first, or these are, and that's a real life thing that me as a woman that I've gone through with dating, right? Like, well, XYZ, right? And then we learn that you step back and you just be who you are. They should receive you and you should receive them. But we play into basically what we think the other person is going to want. So when you have those things, we internalize it. So it does have some, compatibility. So it's good that you recognize it, because it is your problem, but it does bleed over into who you're interacting with, because these are relationships.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. And that's why I'm talking about this, is because I understand that.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I've always appreciated your vulnerability, Rev. It's a lot of folks that are requesting, but I want to thank you for joining us. It's good to see you. It's been too long.
Good to see you too, man.
But thanks for being here. I appreciate you, friend. See you later.
Yeah, talk to you later, bud.
Okay, take care. It's a great point, right? I mean, if we're talking the ultimate scenario or the ultimate example of being vulnerable is literally being yourself. Now that we may have issues with ourselves that we don't like about ourselves, but if we expect, like, I'm a big believer in emotional intimacy. I'm a sapiosexual. I've said that before. Like, brains really are just really appealing to me. I believe in the emotional intimacy, the struggle to find true emotional intimacy. That's what I seek in my relationships, and I don't feel like I could ever find or ever expect somebody to truly be emotionally intimate with me if I'm not willing to be my entire self. Love me or leave me, take it or leave it. That's kind of how I approach it. That maybe I'd like to think most people would, but that's kind of how I approach it, right?
And I think the biggest thing is with that also is now deciding to unpack that or not. And I will say though, for me, it's always a step of, for me, unpacking, because we may not recognize it, but we do implicitly put those biases we hold onto other people. So like, one of the big things I teach with my teachers is kids know when you don't like them. And it's really heartbreaking, because you may not say it directly through your words. You may not say it directly through other things, but your actions will always be very telling, and they tell the truth, right? So even if when your words may be lying or hiding something or trying to hold something back, how you treat them versus other people, they're going to know. So everyone always, like, there's multiple forms of language. There's our verbal language, but then there's our body language and our actions. And when those two don't align, people can pick that up. So it's really important to unpack those things, because your partner, maybe you're not displaying that you're performing an act, but your partner may pick it up too. And you may project those performances onto them.
That's a great point. What's up, friend? How are you, Fish?
Oh boy. Hey, I joined a little late. Hey, I'm just reacting to the prompt. I've challenged myself with this many times in the past. I don't think it's a possibility, and I'm just being open. I'm pretty hard on myself, and I don't like myself. It sounds fucked up, and I'm sorry. I don't think I could ever.
No, it's okay. So let's
love myself, and I think it's I don't know. I've never attained it, so I don't think it's a thing.
Do you think you're not meeting what the qualities are, what idea of man is?
I just don't. When I look at myself and think about myself, I'm not up to par on many things.
Do you feel like you're not meeting what, like, are you not making enough money? Do you not feel attractive? Like, what are those things?
Um,
You don't have to be vulnerable with me.
no, it's fine. It's fine. I'm looking away from the screen. And I'm just going to answer the questions. I think the money thing is fine. I think I have a decent job and money's coming, and it hasn't been the greatest, but it will be. But what was the next thing you said? I'm not what?
Do you feel attractive? Like, what's going
No,
on?
I'm not attractive.
Okay.
I think I think in the past I've been attractive. I think now I don't like the way I look.
So,
I think there's a lot of things I need to work on, and I don't have, I used to have a bit of a swagger about me, and I don't like what I see anymore.
so that was one of the things we did discuss earlier. And so I'm going to ask you this question. Who determines what beauty is?
Me or the other person, I guess. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm like screwing up the whole flow of the live. I can do another time, but
That's why we're here, man. It's all good. It's all
Yeah.
good. That's why we're here.
And what if I told you that the beauty standards of what you see in like online spaces that are pushed onto you are rooted into intentionally harm you and make you hate yourself?
I think it would make sense.
Yeah.
I think, it might be a
So
bit
is
of.
it so
Go
is,
ahead.
are you truly unattractive, or are they trying to make you feel unattractive?
I feel unattractive. There's things about me I don't like, whether it be how I've changed over the years.
Wait. Hear what I'm saying. Is it, are you truly unattractive, or are there images that they're telling you, what they're telling you, is that what's truly they're telling you that you're unattractive? There is two differences. Do you hear that?
I'm not unattractive.
There you go. You're not unattractive.
You're not. You're not. Can confirm.
Yeah,
Right? It's society telling you you're unattractive, right? And what society says is bullshit, because let me tell you, it's fucking racist, right? What is deemed beautiful is rooted in white supremacy, right? And even if you're white, yes, there's white people that get caught up in those beauty standards that don't fit those white supremacist beauty standards. So it's not you. It's our fucked up white supremacist society that's telling you that you're ugly. It's not your fault, right? And so when we start unpacking that, it's really relieving, right? That you're not ugly. They're just pieces of shit.
Yeah. And again, I apologize for joining late, but it's just a.
Don't apologize. Don't. Hey, you've been in my lives before. What do we always say?
I know.
Take your what? Take your what?
Flowers.
Take your damn flowers. Seriously. Just for people who don't know, Fish and I are friends off the app, and he has been part of this growing movement that we have about this do something movement. He reached out to me. He wanted to be involved. Your heart is massively large, my friend. You are one hell of a handsome dude. You are vulnerable. You're unpacking your shit. That is beautiful, Fish. Beautiful.
Thank you.
And fuck the society. It's racist. Don't listen to them.
Yeah, I think I appreciate that. I don't want to be the center of attention for too long, so I appreciate we can move on. But thank you for this start.
No, thank you for coming up and being vulnerable, because other men need to see men doing that.
Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Love you,
Keep her
pal.
coming up.
I'll reach out. Okay.
All right. Love
Keep
you
the
guys
faith.
too.
Talk
Okay,
to you soon.
bye-bye.
See ya. Love it. I love that. Thank you for being vulnerable. Got a request from Stompy. First of all, I'm grateful the two of you were there for that, and I want to echo the sentiments shared by both Adi and Ash Fish, that being vulnerable, vulnerable is sexy. It's a quality that I wish more people had in general. That's emotional intimacy, to be that willing to be, emotionally naked in front of people that you don't know, even though we're friends. That's a big deal. You can request, Stompy. I just sent you the. There you go. I'll accept that request now, and you can join us.
Hey there,
Hello,
friend.
Stompy.
Hey,
How are you?
sorry, I missed my last request. My fault.
okay.
I could not press the accept button, but hello. I saw the prompt and I immediately knew I had something valuable to add to this topic here.
Okay.
Men can men love themselves? Abso-freaking-lutely. And this might be a step that it takes some others time to get to. However, a lot of what helps a man love himself, in my personal opinion, is having people in your life that love you, right? When I met my girlfriend, I will tell you, I started loving myself a lot more than I ever have. And I'll tell you, it's really helped me a lot because I feel emotionally validated and cared for and respected in my own emotions. Like my girlfriend will often tell me, like, she's like, hey, you know what? You need your time. You want to go play Xbox and hang out with some of your friends for a while? Whatever. That's cool. It's what you need. You need that, for yourself. For your own mental health, go for it. I don't care. She understands and respects the things that I need to make myself happy, and she's just cool with that. There's a lot of that. There's a lot. Humans are complex. And we have a lot of needs, and having someone in your life that can understand those things, maybe not understand them, but at least just know, hey, that's what you need. That makes all the difference.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Based on something you said, Stompy. I may have misheard it, but were you not able to love yourself prior to being in a relationship?
I mean, yeah. I guess I could say I was, but it's like having someone romantically involved in my life, I guess, added that extra bit of external validation because sure, there is internal validation, absolutely, but there's also external, and sometimes having that external it can boost you, in a certain type of way.
I would just be mindful of that because that's one of the things we discussed about unpacking, right? Is that you receive that validation through your proximity to a woman, right? And that's one of the identity issues that men are having, is that their value is attributed to their proximity to women. And we don't want to display the message that's contrary to what we've been talking about, that oh yeah, no, go find women that they're going to help you unpack, right? Because one of the issues with this too as well is that men who are unpacking and do want to start unpacking, unfortunately for us as women, they end up trying to use us as therapists and ask women for undue labor to help them seek help, right? And yes, there are women who are out there who are going to want to help you, but that's not fair to put all your trauma and burdens for women to carry. As again, I'm just gonna, because I'm still a woman. At the end of the day, women do a majority of the labor, right? They do majority of what is known as the second shift. That even when women are the primary breadwinners at home, they're still doing a majority of the domestic labor. And now on top of that, they have to carry your trauma. That's a lot for a woman to carry. So it's making sure that you're not putting all that for her not to only just carry her own trauma, because remember, she lives in a patriarchy, right? That does a lot onto her and causes a lot of stress. But now she's carrying yours too. That is unfair. So making sure that, we're not putting that onus and that burden onto women, and still not also perpetuating that identity crisis that your value is attributed to your proximity to women.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And it kind of came about from there was a day when I guess I was feeling particularly overworked from my job and just everything that's been going on, and she said, hey, she said, I know you focus a lot on taking care of me and making me happy and doing all this stuff for me. She said, what do you need right now? And that kind of changed a lot of things for me, And I think a lot of guys would benefit from thinking about hey, what do I need right now? What not what does everybody else in my life need right now, but what do I need in this moment to make myself happier? And I think having that question posed to me really changed how I think about things. What do I need? Because and the metaphor that was brought forth to me by a good friend of mine, he's been with me since we were kids, but he's like, hey, look, a sinking ship, a ship's got a hole in it, it's leaking water, it can't carry passengers like that. What do you need to patch that hole? Like, what do you if you understand what I'm saying, it's like, hey, what do you need right now to feel okay? You have to take care of yourself before you take care of anyone else in your life. So what do you need?
I would just encourage you to think back to what the prompt asks, though. Don't put conditions on it, right? Like the prompt isn't, if I didn't have a girlfriend or a partner, could I love myself? Right? Don't attach conditions to it, because ultimately the goal here is for you to be able to recognize in the things about yourself that you like, and are you able to love yourself, whether you have a partner or not. Go ahead, Ash.
I think when the first part of the statement that you made was a true statement. You should be around people who love you.
Absolutely.
Period. And what you said after was when I found a girlfriend. And I'm not going to say that sometimes, we don't grow together, right? But I think that, finding yourself in those places before, and that finding people who love you, regardless of if it's romantic, right? Good guy friends that you can open up and be vulnerable with, that they're helping you heal as your community of peers, not the person who is who's oppressed through the things that you're going through, the person who sort of deals with the emotional labor of those things. Now, that's not to say that your partners don't support you up, and I think that it's lovely that she said, what can I do for you? I think you do those things in a relationship, right? You want to lift each other up.
Right.
The key thing here that we are talking about is that absent of romantic relationships and absent of women, can you love yourself? And you should be able to before you are in a relationship, or if you should never, be in one. I don't know if else.
Yeah. No, I understand what you mean, but I think it was happenstance that was, a romantic partner. Like, that was happenstance. But, I do think having that question posed to me was is what changed my worldview. And it could have been anyone who posed such a question to me. But I think having that question posed to me is like, wow, shit, that kind of changed something for me here. You know what? Hey, you're right. And I think that's something that any of the men listening to this live right now could really, listen to and hear and really, dwell on is, what do you need right now to make yourself happy? Without thinking necessarily of other people in your life, because you have to be in a good mindset if you even, I don't care how much of a people person you are, someone who's helping other people, you have to be able to take care of yourself first before you take care of anyone else in your life. So
with any relationship, you won't be able to have a functional job.
Right.
It's going to go even beyond that, right?
Right.
Right. These are all things that help us as individuals with all of the relationships that we have with people.
Oh yeah.
Like they say, the only penis you should care about is your happiness.
Yeah. I like that.
Stop.
Yeah.
Thanks for jumping in today. I appreciate you. Thanks for being
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for talking, folks. I appreciate you.
You got it. Have a good night. Be safe.
Okay. Ash with my dad joke.
I was gonna say Ash with the dad joke.
I worked at a birth center where we didn't have any men on staff, and I was the designated dad joker. I was like, I'm just funny, Will. I'm just funny.
I'm glad that topic went where it went, because I was thinking about that as he was asking, and I think you brought this up to start the show tonight, Adi, and you as well, Ash, about is our happiness dependent on others? And that becomes this need dynamic. Like I would challenge that to say, if you can't be happy with yourself, then how can you expect to be happy with someone else, meaning
Mhm.
that you've got to be comfortable in your own shoes, so to speak. Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think my whole premise of it all too is just detaching your identity from all these tangible things, right? Again, like proximity to women, proximity to wealth, proximity to your member. All these things that are just tangible that can be taken away with you in like a heartbeat. You can get in a bad car accident and lose it all, right? It takes one
Exactly.
medical bill to put yourself in poverty in the United States, and you can be in a car accident with your partner, lose your member, lose your partner, and now lose your money because you're in poverty because you have this huge medical bill. And are you any less, and I'm not saying that's going to be not a traumatic event, but still, are you any less of a man? Like how, like should that event skew your idea of your own masculinity? And I would hope you would say no.
Agreed. Good evening, friend. How are you? I saw you in the request box. What's on your mind tonight?
Hey. Well, you know, I'm so sad because I missed the first half of what you had going on tonight, and I was so looking forward to it, but I had some work going on. But I was really curious if y'all have at any point kind of spoken about boundaries, because, like, so as a therapist, I see some, you know, cis men in my practice. Some of them have a really hard time with boundaries. Not to say that women don't as well, but it's a very interesting sort of, you know, conversation to have with a man about setting boundaries with his own father, setting boundaries with a male coworker or boss. And I'm just curious if that's come up in conversation.
I'll take that. I am really bad at it. I must say, I'm good. I'm good professionally, but I'm realizing it, and through some help of some people that I care a lot about, I'm trying to get better at it personally. I don't. Maybe that's just a dynamic that exists with men, maybe individual, but I'm not good at it. I'm really not.
So this is
I must admit.
this is, and I'll say this from a Black woman's perspective specifically. This is an issue when you hold a seat of privilege, period. That when you hold a privileged identity, that because the world centers around you, so we got Fax over here who is like the epitome of privilege on in this live right now.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
When the world centers around you, you don't have to think of how it affects others, and you don't have to even think about the boundaries that are set, right? And so you can just walk into space and present yourself as the center of the space, because you don't have to think about those boundaries and consent violations and things like that. And we've seen this historically happen, especially with Black women. When you walk up to a Black woman and you just grab her hair as if you're entitled to her body, because you are white, or you're a white man, or even if you're a white woman, you feel you've never had to consider the consent violation that happens with harming other people's space and boundaries. So I think it's also, when we're talking about boundary violations, we have to recognize the seats of privileges that we hold and taking up space, and how much space we take with the seat of privileges in those identities.
Totally. And I guess I also think about boundaries as like there's like two sides of it. Not saying like two opposing sides, but that like there's, you know, two sides of a coin here. And it's like there's the boundaries that they are not necessarily respecting in like their external relationships. And then there's the entire internal process, which I would imagine is very mirrored, where if you're lacking the ability to be with someone who's asking for, you know, consent before you engage with them, or, you know, they've made explicit what their boundary is and you're just crossing it all over the place, I would totally imagine that people cross yours all the time as well. So it's, you know, it's like, I always notice that it's like, a man will argue with you about crossing other people's boundaries, but when you start asking him about his, that's when he gets really quiet and really meek. Like all of a sudden it's like, ooh, you mean that I have to set boundaries with someone that I feel intimidated by? What do you mean? Can't I just puff up my chest or cross boundaries? And it's like, see, this is why we are where we are. So
throw some dirt on it, proverbially speaking. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's because when you ask them to now put themselves in other people's shoes, they can't decenter themselves. And this is where and I'm sorry, I know it's gonna offend some of them, and this is where we start seeing mantrums, right? Like me. What? How dare you say no to me? But this happens with everyone with seats of privileges, that they cannot help but center themselves in the dynamic. And so that's why they get upset if you say no to them, because it's what they want without considering what they're doing to you.
If you've ever, like, when they say it's not that big of a deal to be hit on, you know, or how come she didn't say hi to me when I'm in line, you know, if you flip the situation and say, then, like, are you perfectly comfortable with gay men just like hitting on you all the time? They get extremely defensive, and all of a sudden now think about a boundary that they may want. Whereas before, it's not that big of a deal, right? Because it's something that they want.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I guess what really occurs to me is the more that men can trace back into their histories where these patterns originate from, and also like on a personal level and inside of these systemic structures, you know, for them to not only deconstruct the systemic structures, but to also, you know, go back to the origin of the story. Who was the first person in their life that told them that, you know, boundaries are only for the head of the household or whatever it is? Like, who was the person who shamed them out of having them or their feelings in the first place? I think that, you know, men on this app, you know, like when we're having conversations, like it's all men, they just tend to come from a very hostile place. But I unfortunately notice that that's like such a powerful way to connect with them on things. And it's just so wild to me that they would rather be in a confrontation and a conflict rather than just look inward at their own history and realize, holy shit, I was raised by a jerk. Like, whoa, maybe none of this is what I actually believe in. Maybe all of this is just programmed responses and I actually have full control to do it differently. And maybe that's why no one likes me. You know, maybe that's why people stay away from me.
Maybe.
Anyway.
Yeah, maybe. Thanks for jumping in tonight, friend. Good to
Of
see
course.
you.
Thank you so
Thanks for
much.
being here. I appreciate you. Ash, I was curious. This thought just popped into my head. I know that Adi occasionally joins you on your lives. Have you noticed a shift? I mean, I know you've been doing this and you're really good at it. I want to give you props for that. Have you noticed a shift? Have you seen less, maybe anger is the wrong word, but less initial sort of vitriolic response to your prompts? Has there been more engagement?
I think I saw a shift when I changed the prompt to I'm a feminist and I don't hate men. And so that elicited men like using that against me, right? See, the feminist movement sucks. Like, you have to say that you don't hate men because it's so obvious that feminism, you know, and it's like, no, that's you who's, you know, saying that feminists hate men. So I've gotten that. But yeah, I think like once I sort of got away from the idea of trying to win debates and have conversation, you know, because I started in like pro-life, pro-choice, you know, you want to get a W, only want to get a concession, that type of thing. Like, that only matters a little bit, right? You can, you know, a good salesman could convince you of anything, right? That doesn't necessarily mean it's a W. So I do think that I've seen a little bit of better or longer conversations, but with that has also come those same people like really, really, really pushing back against them, which might need to happen, so it might be this thing that has to happen, right? Because they're not going to lay down and take it. So this fighting back that we're seeing is actually an indicator to me that they're seeing the liberation. They're freaking out, right? Because where do they go? Where do they go when they don't want to engage in the uncomfortableness? They go to the forced doctrine, right? That we can just make you do it, you know. And I just remind them, if you make me a stay-at-home wife and I cook your sandwiches, I just might make you an arsenic sandwich. And now who has the more power, right? So, I mean, the fort. It's, but I think it's a push and pull. I don't know. It's hard on TikTok too, because it's like TikTok is, and now they let anybody get up on the live. So we have 15-year-olds come up and they just want to slur and.
Well, also in regards to that, so if anybody's read the book White Fragility, I have my qualms about it. As a Black woman, I do. I think it's a good book. It's not for me the best book, but it is a good start for at least white people in understanding race and racism. And what I do like though is the beginning of White Fragility, where it talks about that racism is so embedded in the United States that any critique of our system and any critique of racism in the country is a critique on the country itself. And I think that's very equivalent to men and patriarchy, that patriarchy is so embedded in the United States that it's automatically that any critique of patriarchy is hatred towards men, right? That if you critique patriarchy at all, that you must hate men. And I think that's really inevitable, that even just like saying, hey, like stop raping women, you're a man hater, you just hate men so much. No, I'm just asking you to stop raping us, y'all. I'm like, that's really it.
Again, low bar. Hi, AD. Thanks for being here. What you
Good
got?
evening. I am so glad you're doing this. I know you know that, but thank you, Ash and Ari, for doing this. This topic is definitely going to need a part, 2, 3, all the way, as evidenced by the people that we've had coming up. And wow, some real vulnerability showed up. And isn't that why we love this, right? Can men love themselves? I have so many thoughts. You know me, ADHD is going wild right now. But just really squirrel, like so many important points have been made, so many really valuable pieces of conversation. And I think
AD, just for background, Adi and Ash, AD is a therapist. Just for a little bit of background.
Yes, hello. And Steve and I actually met doing Are You Okay Live. God, what's it been? A couple of years now, Steve? Like when that happened? Yeah. And Magic was born, and he's been doing this amazing thing for a long time, where we have these conversations that matter in this climate where everything's so heavy, right? And so I guess for me as a clinical therapist, I'm always looking at it from the relational dynamic, right? Because we know men want to connect with women, or if cis men do, right? Like we know humans, let me just back up. We know humans want connection, right? We're hardwired to be connected. It's a survival thing. And so how do we connect? And this whole epidemic of the red pill and the male loneliness is like, I want to connect and I can't seem to do it with women. And so I'm just going to connect with other people who believe what I believe, because it feels better to have that validation. And I really think there's value in us continuing this conversation, especially to Bishop came up and Fish, and just, I hear this, like, I want to love myself. I want to be able to do the things to get the connection that I want. I just don't know how. What does that even look like to love yourself? What does that even mean? A lot of my clients don't even know what it means. What does it even mean to love myself? I have no idea. And certainly the men that are in my couch are often quite unsure about even just boundaries. Like that was the other thing, I think, just defining what is a boundary. Well, it's not a demand you put on someone else's behavior, for starters. It's a thing that you say, hey, if you do this thing and you continue to do this thing, I'm going to disengage from this interaction or relationship or whatever. Right? Like it's you knowing yourself well enough to say, here's how I want to be treated. And relationally, I think women do that really well, because historically we've been able to, right? Like we are the relational barometer of the society, really, because we're allowed to be, right? And I really believe that that's kind of where it is for me with I want men to understand relationally it's okay to respond to someone's need, even if it's not yours, right? To recognize that someone else's need doesn't have to be important to you for you to come and be there for them. And looking elsewhere for why you're feeling icky, that's not where you need to be looking, my friend. You need to be like turning that inside and be like, what's going on in you that's giving you that icky feel? And that's, yeah.
Do you guys think it's the people? I mean, the question that we're asking about, can men love themselves? Do you think it's that men who are struggling with that are waiting for permission to be able to love themselves?
I
From a
think
societal perspective.
I think that there's a real like fear of being vulnerable and being rejected by like other men, right? I mean, if we're gonna say, men have this power, they have it over men too. And the male gaze is a thing, right? I mean, I see it all the time, right? I'll have a man come up, we'll have a conversation, he'll get out of control, whatever the case, and I'll drop him. And then another man will come up and want to defend him. So they're very focused on what other men think. And so it's this weird place where it's like the blind can't lead the blind, but it's not necessarily safe for women to be putting themselves in these places or their job. So it's like this balance of like, are there good men who can start these groups or these spaces where men can be vulnerable, right? So it's like you want them to go to the right men, so it's I don't know. I mean, I think that I think Artie came up
I
through it.
think
Yeah.
I think you actually hit on something that's actually really important. Because what we do know, and like we do have data for this, is that men do not handle rejection well at all. They just don't. We know that that women have to, and there are studies of this, that they have to placate their rejection of men so that men do not harm them. Right. And unfortunately, we have seen women unalived when they have rejected men. And I think, but this also goes to men rejecting other men in different ways, like rejecting men who don't play up to this notion of masculinity and things like that. And this is where we also see homophobia, because they see homophobia as, or like queer men as, in proximity to femininity. And so in those types of rejections as well. And I think that's also something that men might need to unpack within themselves is, if you get rejected by other men, is that necessarily a bad thing? And who are these other men that are rejecting you? Are they somebody that you really want to aspire to be accepted by? And so I think, Ash, you hit on something really important, is that fear of rejection from those men. But are those men like, do you want to be accepted by Andrew Tate? Do you really,
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you should. And so unpacking your fear of rejection, and no is an okay thing. Like, hearing no is fine. The worst thing you could hear is a no, and then you move on with your life and you go figure out something to do. And learning to accept that no, and that rejection isn't the end of the world.
Spot on, my friend. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just was going to say, yeah, that's spot on. We know that shame trigger, that wound of rejection is so real. I mean, that's true for all humans, but it's really intense for men, because then if you're rejecting me, what do I even do with that? If you don't have that emotional awareness, if you haven't done that work on yourself, how do you even fix that? How do you get that back? How do you figure out how to avoid rejection? Well, you find communities where you're not rejected, and ergo, here we are with figuring out how to, not make those communities so attractive, because what they're based on is fear and ickiness, and we're not going to do better with that.
And Artie, I think you touched on this, and we talked about this to start the conversation tonight about, in this case, men being rejected. They would not take that as anything that they're responsible for. They'll blame the person who rejected them, and they'll act out, whether it be through anger or violence or whatever that might be. That seems to be the common thread.
Yeah, unfortunately, we just had a blue-collared woman unalived because of she was outperforming, I believe I could be wrong, but I believe she was outperforming one of her fellow colleagues, and he unalived her with her sledgehammer. And so we see all the times and this is where I get like the threats to masculinity. And I think this is something also to unpack, because someone said, oh, we need to unpack toxic masculinity. I said this earlier. What is masculinity?
I'll be right back. Keep going, you guys.
No worries. It's an unnecessary category, right? So again, it just keeps prescribing this performance. So I would argue, unpack toxic masculinity. All masculinity is harmful, because what it's telling you is that you need to perform to these measures. And that also gives opportunity for rejection, because if you don't perform to these measures of what someone else perceives masculinity to be, even if it's the most innocent performance of masculinity, that gives you that opportunity to be rejected again. Overall, I just reject the idea of performance, right? And we should all be truly authentically ourselves, and that I'm not masculine or feminine, I'm just Ari. And you should be proud to be that and not have to perform within those parameters of what we see gender.
Ari, I love your cosplay analogy, because that's so on point what you're saying, right? If someone rejects my cosplay costume, now what? Who am I? What do I do? Well, you can't be authentic, then that's going to be a problem. If you're trying to figure out what suit you got to wear to be accepted, and you're not just understanding that just be you and that's what matters, then what do you do with that? And yeah, that's so on point. I love that cosplaying analogy of masculinity, like all that cosplay. Yep. Going to use that.
AD, thank you for jumping in. I love you, friend. I appreciate it.
Love you more. Thank you both for doing this. This was great.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
You're also welcome to steal it, because my friends, actually one of my friends always love quoting me on that I say gender's a cosplay. They're like,
There's a cosplay. Thank you. I'm definitely going to use it.
It is, because, well, I mean, as I've gotten older and I work from home and I just don't care as much, I'm cosplaying like Saturday morning unshowered more than anything is what I'm cosplaying these days. But like, if it truly was, I would embody whatever that was all of the time, right? But when I'm at home by myself, I mean, yeah, sometimes I want to look cute or whatnot, right? But yeah, I mean, we put it on to perform, because we aren't in that, we're not doing that 24/7 at home when I'm eating without silverware over the counter because nobody's watching, right? So
Exactly. Let's see. Red Zone Tony, how are you tonight?
Doing all right. How are you?
Fine, thank you. What's on your mind?
Well, I figured I'd answer the prompt and say that, yes, I do think that it is possible for men to love themselves without necessarily having to rely on the opposite sex in order to, develop themselves and to develop, a rich, fulfilling life. But what it does take, honestly, is it takes a really strong, healthy community. And I think that what we all have to do, and like the things that you're working on yourself, is that I think as men, we have to develop that community, with each other, in the sense that we have to make it okay to be vulnerable with each other without bleeding all over each other. If you get my drift, you know what I mean? Maintaining a sense of boundaries, in the sense that, you don't want people just burying all their trauma all over you per se, but, just making it okay to say, you know what, I'm not okay. Today's been rough. This is how I'm feeling. This is where my head is at. And, cultivating a community that allows us to, be okay with not having to be strong all the time, because nobody can be that all the time. But go ahead.
Good. I was going to say, do you have that conversation? Do you share that wisdom you just shared with us with people in your community?
Whenever I have conversations, because I do have to confess that I'm a bit of a workaholic, but not necessarily by choice. Got a lot of bills, live by myself, all that kind of stuff. But I do tend to have those conversations, with close siblings of mine, with close friends of mine. And the thing that's really interesting is they challenge me as much as I challenge them, right? And they, particularly my brother, because it's not always been the easiest relationship. And I've definitely had to hold myself accountable because, you know, like when we were much younger, because I was the oldest brother, and, you know, I had already been used to being bullied and, you know, picked on and, you know, kind of trashed by my peers for being soft, quote unquote. You know, I didn't want him going through that. So I was fine to telling him, hey, look, you can't go out there crying. You can't do this. You can't do that because, you know, they'll just pounce on you. And, you know, you got to be stronger than that. But all it ended up doing was teaching him how to repress his emotions. And, you know, we kind of had to unpack a lot of that together, and we still do that. So yes.
Adi, Ash,
Yeah, I was gonna
any
ask.
commentary?
I noticed you do you feel like you carry a lot of that? I just was curious. You said that like that to not trauma dump, and I feel like what you highlighted is that there aren't enough places for men to go, and then I think like that there are these things like they do need to trauma dump. That's not necessarily fair to you as one person, but then you highlighted community too. So like collectively, right? That's why like one best friend, one partner, that's not how we operate. That collectively we can take care of each other. So it almost sounds like you maybe you did some of the work, but then you had to bear a lot of that responsibility. And what I'm hearing is that just highlights that men need it and there aren't enough spaces to go.
I mean, I would agree with that. And I would, you know, I'll definitely admit to, you know, having done that. Especially, you know, like putting it my own way. Like I, as the big brother of the family, you know, for a long time, I've had to take on or at least maybe it's not actually the case. And some of this is just in my head, but like, I often feel like I have to be the guy with the answers. You know, my brothers and sisters, you know, they come to me with problems a lot. And I'm also the guy who, you know, other friends come to and talk to because like I've let them know like, hey man, if you need to talk, call me and we'll talk. And I've kind of been that guy who has, you know, sat down for sometimes hours at a time and let people just kind of vent everything that they have going on. And I have sort of taken on that, but it does get heavy sometimes. And I do think that you're right. Like no person is an island and nobody can do it alone. And yeah, we do need those spaces. And that's why it makes me so angry, you know, when I think about the red pill, because the thing is like I'm certain at this point, like the only reason that spaces like red pill and MGTOW and, you know, the incel community, like those places existed because they pretended to be the arm around the shoulders of men. And they snuck in misogyny into the back door by pretending to care about things that men deal with.
I just want to highlight really quick too, like there was a comment that said that this feels insincere, and I just want to highlight that like what you're doing is what harms men. And you're right, some people might be insincere, but I don't think we can determine that. And what you're doing right now is part of the problem, is that somebody's being vulnerable and saying things, and they might say things that are wrong, but they're here, they're saying things, and they're having the conversation. And when you tell somebody who is being vulnerable and you shame them or tell them that you don't believe them, that's what's done to us. Men don't believe us. And so I just think that we should be careful, especially when we're having these, like, you know, this wasn't a shit on men live, and it's also not a come up, and nobody's coming up and we're not trauma dumping either, quote unquote. I heard somebody say, I think I agree with that. Trauma dumping is not real, but let's not do that. That's why we're here. And to be honest, maybe it feels insincere because we're not used to men saying it, and that's a problem too. So maybe that's something that's that internalized misogyny that you need to unpack. Because while, yes, hearing men can be triggering for women too. because people didn't listen to us for a long time. But like we got it, like we're here, right? Artie and I decided to show up. Nobody has forced us to be here. Nobody's forcing us to have these conversations. So if we're going to do it, we should welcome people doing it. Because I would say that it would be insincere of us if we shamed somebody.
I'm glad you called that out, because I saw that comment as well. Red, I want to appreciate you jumping in. I hope that last little bit there, that comment didn't distract you or didn't allow you to lose focus, because I think the things you're talking about are the things that we all need to talk about. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you being vulnerable. Thanks for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you, Red. I think that's a great spot. It is 10, and I want to make sure that I give my two amazing co-hosts this evening opportunities for last words. Who'd like to start? Final thoughts for tonight, please.
All right. Go ahead. You got it, Ash.
I'm glad we did it. Artie and I kind of just met organically through like some other mutuals, and she's joined my panels. We've had great, just sort of organic conversations. I was nervous. I don't know why I was nervous, but I joined Facts Live in the morning and BS around, and I'm goofy and stuff. So I think that we had a good little trio here of a conversation, and I'm happy to do it. I'm always learning as well. And if anybody wants to, my DMs are open for, just be nice. But if anybody has any questions or anything, so.
Thank you. You sell yourself short. You sell yourself short, Ash, but thank you for being here. I appreciate that. Audie.
Ash needs to give herself more credit, because she came to me and she's like, hey, you want to do this? I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm just tagging along. So Ash is really the one that like called for this all together. So like Ash needs a lot of props. I'm just a person who likes to read books, loves educating, and just really all the work I do is I want to see a better future for children. And that means we need to fix ourselves as adults to give themselves a better future. So the biggest thing is the first step of equity is the self. So you need to heal oneself. You have to put your oxygen mask on before you can help anybody else. And men need to really stop. And I'm saying this is blunt and straightforward, so people don't get as confused as possible. Men need to stop with this idea of being the protector and the provider, and they need to learn to protect themselves from other men, protect themselves from the emotional trauma of other men, protect themselves from all these woes that are white supremacy. And learn to love themselves and find identity within themselves before they can to navigate other spaces outwards. And that will change their lives drastically. And I know that will help our society, because those things, like I said earlier, that those things trickle out into the world. How you treat yourself and love yourself does trickle out into how you treat other people. And once men start loving themselves more, we will see the drastic difference in how they treat others. And then my final quote is, I'm going to say it again, LeVar Burton, a reader for life is a learner for life. And a learner for life is someone who I consider to be a dangerous person, because you do not have to take someone else's word for it. So stay dangerous, my friends. Keep reading.
Stay dangerous. Again, thank you both for being here. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Thank you, mods. Thank you for these conversations. I feel like there's a lot more that we can unpack. The three of us will chat, and maybe we'll do a part two. Well, we'll definitely do a part two. It's just a matter of coordinating schedules. Again, thank you both very much. Thank you for trusting me to hold this space. Thank you all for being here. Everybody go raid left Jess. She's live now. Tell her we said hello. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. If I don't speak with either of you, please have a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Talk to you guys soon. Have a great night, everybody.